The thunder of 200 Harley-Davidson engines echoed across the quiet town of Oak Ridge, Oregon, reverberating off storefronts and turning every head on the street. Massive chrome machines piloted by leather-clad men with weathered faces and gray beards rolled in perfect formation toward Oak Ridge Elementary School. The convoy stretched for nearly half a mile, a river of gleaming metal and weathered leather flowing through the stunned small town. Teachers and students pressed against classroom windows. The principal rushed outside, face pale with confusion. Parents arriving for afternoon pickup froze beside their minivans and SUVs. Among the sea of intimidating bikers, a petite figure led the procession. Her sleek black Harley Road King contrasted with her slender frame, but she handled the powerful machine with natural confidence. Sarah Martinez rode with her, back straight, chin lifted, her long dark hair streaming from beneath her helmet. At 38, she carried herself with the disciplined poise of someone who had faced far worse than curious stares. Behind the school fence, a small girl with a bright red bandana tied around her neck broke away from her classmates. 9-year-old Lily Martinez ran toward the approaching thunder, her face transformed by a radiant smile that had been absent for weeks. This was the moment that would change everything in Oak Ridge. But to understand how 200 bikers came to descend upon a small-town elementary school, we must go back 7 days earlier. "Mom, they bullied me again." The words tumbled from Lily's trembling lips as she burst through the door of the Iron Rose Cafe on Main Street. Her school uniform was smeared with mud, one knee torn and bloody. Worse than the physical damage was the devastation in her eyes, the slump of her small shoulders as she clutched a torn red bandana in her fist. Sarah Martinez looked up from the espresso machine she was repairing, her practiced smile disappearing instantly. The half-dozen regular customers in the cafe fell silent. Several of the older men, retired loggers and mill workers, who spent their mornings nursing coffee and debating politics, stiffened in their seats, their eyes following the little girl who now buried her face in her mother's apron. "What happened, sweetheart?" Sarah knelt, her voice soft, but controlled years of military discipline, keeping her growing fury in check. "Jason and his friends said I don't belong here." Lily sobbed. "They pushed me down by the playground. They said nobody wants Mexicans in Oak Ridge." She held up the torn bandana. "They ripped Grandpa's bandana and said it was trash." Sarah's jaw tightened, but her hands remained gentle as she brushed mud from her daughter's cheek. The cafe had gone completely silent. Even the ancient percolator behind the counter seemed to pause its gurgling. "Doc?" Sarah called, her voice eerily calm. "Could you look at her knee?" Howard Miller, 72 years old, and the town's retired Army medic turned local physician, was already moving from his usual corner table. With kind efficiency, he guided Lily to a chair as Sarah went to get the first aid kit she kept behind the counter. "Those would be the Harlow boys," Frank Matthews rumbled from his seat by the window. At 67, the town's sheriff still carried himself with the rigid posture of the Korean War veteran he was. "Their father's that developer buying up half the town." Sarah nodded once, her movements precise, as she handed the kit to Doc Miller. "Third time this month." "School doing anything about it?" Frank asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Principal said children will be children." Sarah's voice remained controlled, but the cafe regulars, men who had known her since she was Lily's age, recognized the dangerous fire in her eyes. Most of Oak Ridge knew Sarah Martinez only as the hard-working single mother who had returned to her hometown 4 years ago after her husband's death. She ran her family's cafe with quiet efficiency, attended PTA meetings, and kept to herself. Only a few suspected there was more to the reserved woman who sometimes moved with an alertness that seemed out of place behind a coffee counter. None of the children who tormented her daughter knew that Sarah Martinez had once been Staff Sergeant Martinez, a Marine sniper, with 2 tours in Desert Storm. None of them knew that the delicate hands that now served coffee and mended Lily's torn clothes had once assembled and operated precision rifles in sandstorms. And certainly none knew about the nightstand drawer in Sarah's bedroom that contained medals the public would never see for operations the government would never acknowledge. "All patched up, young lady," Doc Miller announced, applying a Mickey Mouse bandage to Lily's knee with the same care he had once shown to wounded soldiers. "Brave as your grandfather, this one." Lily's eyes brightened slightly at the mention of her grandfather. "Mom, can you fix his bandana?" She held out the torn red cloth like it was a wounded bird. "Of course, sweetheart." Sarah took the bandana, running her thumb over the embroidered wolf's head, in one corner the symbol of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club that her father had founded decades ago. Another piece of her past that she had left behind. Or thought she had. Oak Ridge, Oregon had once been a prosperous lumber town, its massive sawmill employing generations of families who built solid lives among the towering pines. But times had changed. The mill had closed 5 years earlier, leaving the town struggling for identity and economic survival. Now Main Street featured almost as many for sale signs as open businesses. The Iron Rose Cafe stood as a defiant exception, its brick facade, freshly painted windows, clean and neon sign glowing warmly each morning at 5 a.m. when Sarah opened for the early shift loggers and truck drivers. Inside, motorcycle memorabilia, shared wall space with military photos, and vintage Americana. A 1962 Harley-Davidson Panhead, her father's pride and joy, gleamed on a platform near the front window, drawing appreciative glances from tourists passing through on their way to Portland or Eugene. The cafe had been in the Martinez family since 1975, when James Iron Wolf Martinez returned from military service and wanted a place where his riding brothers could gather. Over time, it had evolved from a rough biker hangout to a community institution serving the best coffee and homemade pies in 3 counties. For Sarah, it represented both heritage and haven. After losing her husband and leaving the Marines, she had returned to her hometown seeking peace and stability for Lily. She had sold their San Diego condo, used the life insurance money to renovate the cafe her father had left her, and attempted to build a quiet life away from the shadows of her military past. But Oak Ridge was changing again. Richard Harlow and his development company VistaCorp had arrived 6 months earlier, with promises of economic revival. Their proposal, a luxury resort community that would transform the struggling timber town into an upscale destination for wealthy Californians and Seattleites seeking mountain getaways, had divided the town. Many residents desperate for economic opportunity had already sold their properties to the developer. Others, like Sarah, viewed the project with suspicion. The stakes had escalated 3 weeks ago when VistaCorp announced plans to create an authentic small-town center by acquiring and revitalizing the historic Main Street, including the location currently occupied by the Iron Rose Cafe. Sarah had politely but firmly declined their initial offer. The second offer, double the first, had been rejected equally fast. The third meeting had ended with Sarah showing the VistaCorp representative to the door with a smile that never reached her eyes. "You know they won't take no for an answer forever," Frank Matthews had warned her after that meeting. "Harlow isn't accustomed to being refused." "Neither am I," Sarah had replied, simply turning back to her customers. Now watching Doc Miller tend to Lily's knee, Sarah wondered if the bullying was connected to her refusal to sell. The timing seemed suspicious. Richard Harlow had 3 sons, private school educated, and conspicuously out of place in rural Oregon. The oldest, Jason, was in Lily's class and had made her life increasingly difficult since Sarah's final rejection of VistaCorp's offer. I'll drive you both home, Frank offered, rising from his chair. Got to file a report on this anyway. Thanks, but we'll be fine, Sarah nodded to her assistant manager. Carol, can you close up tonight? I'm taking Lily home early. Outside, autumn painted the Cascade foothills in brilliant oranges and reds, but Sarah barely noticed the beauty as she settled Lily into their old Ford pickup. Her mind was cataloging facts, assessing threats, developing contingencies, habits from her military days that had never quite faded. As she turned the key, she noticed a group of motorcycles parked across the street, sleek, expensive Harleys with blacked-out chrome and custom paint jobs. Their riders, wearing matching leather vests with a black serpent emblem, watched her truck pull away. They weren't locals, and they definitely weren't friendly. Sarah recognized the predatory assessment in their stares. She'd seen it in war zones. These weren't weekend riders or touring enthusiasts. These were the kind of bikers that gave motorcycle clubs a bad name, the 1% that lived outside society's rules. "Who are those scary men, Mom?" Lily asked, following her mother's gaze. Sarah forced a reassuring smile. "Nobody important, sweetheart. Just passing through." But Sarah knew better. Nobody just passed through Oak Ridge. The town wasn't on the way to anywhere. Sarah's modest two-story house sat on 3 acres at the edge of town, her father's original property that had once hosted legendary Iron Wolves gatherings. The detached garage that had served as the club's first meeting place still stood, though Sarah used it now for storage and occasional woodworking projects. After settling Lily with hot chocolate and her favorite science program, Sarah retreated to the kitchen, pulling out her rarely used cell phone. She hesitated, then dialed Frank Matthews' direct line. "Those bikers in town," she said when he answered. "Black Serpents MC. What do you know about them?" A pause. "How do you know who they are?" "I recognize their colors. Dad used to talk about them." This wasn't entirely true, but Sarah wasn't ready to reveal how much she actually knew about the outlaw biker world her father had deliberately kept her sheltered from. "Showed up about a week ago," Frank admitted. 4 at first, now about a dozen. Staying at the Ridge Motel. Say they're just passing through, but they don't seem to be passing anywhere. They have business in Oak Ridge." Another pause. "Sarah, don't go poking at this. I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking my daughter came home beaten up and crying today, and suddenly there are outlaw bikers in our town. That's all. Leave the policing to the police. Focus on Lily." Frank's voice softened. "How's she doing?" "She'll be okay." Sarah glanced toward the living room where Lily was absorbed in her show. "She's stronger than she looks." After hanging up, Sarah remained at the kitchen counter, her mind working. The Black Serpents were bad news. During her husband's military funeral, several of his Marine buddies who rode with legitimate MCs had educated her about the outlaw clubs, especially those known to work as muscle for hire. The Black Serpents featured prominently in those conversations. Sarah opened a drawer and removed a false bottom, retrieving a key. Some preparations couldn't wait. Richard Harlow maintained his corporate headquarters in a newly renovated Victorian on Oak Ridge's east side. At 62, the former Army colonel cut an imposing figure 6'3" with silver hair precisely trimmed. His tailored suits, a stark contrast to the flannel and denim that dominated local wardrobes. He studied the scale model of the proposed Cascade Vista Resort spread across the conference table before him. The miniature building's roadways and amenities represented a $400 million investment that would transform the dying timber town into an exclusive playground for the wealthy. But one small section of the model remained unfinished, a tiny block representing the Iron Rose Café and its surrounding property. A critical parcel that would connect the main resort to the planned marina on the lake. She declined the third offer as well, Jason Reed Harlow's project manager reported. Rather emphatically, I might add. Harlow's jaw tightened. Everyone has a price. She says the cafe isn't for sale at any price. It's her family legacy. Legacy, Harlow scoffed. This town's legacy is failure and economic collapse. We're offering salvation, and she's standing in the way of progress because of sentiment. He moved around the table examining the model from different angles. What do we know about her? Reed consulted his tablet. Sarah Martinez, 38, widow. Her husband was a Marine killed in action. She served as well, honorably discharged 4 years ago. One daughter, 9 years old, came back to Oak Ridge after her husband's death and reopened her father's cafe. The father, James Martinez, local figure deceased 5 years ago, founded some motorcycle club called the Iron Wolves back in the 70s. The cafe was their hangout originally. Harlow froze his hand, hovering above the model. What did you say, the Iron Wolves? Yes, just a small local motorcycle club. Not active anymore from what we can tell. Harlow's expression hardened. Show me a picture of James Martinez. Confused Reed tapped his tablet and turned it toward his boss. The screen displayed an old newspaper photo of a Hispanic man in his 60s standing proudly in front of the Iron Rose Cafe, an American flag on one side, a Marine Corps flag on the other. Harlow stared at the image, his face draining of color. Martinez, he whispered. James Iron Wolf Martinez. He looked up sharply. And the daughter has no idea who I am. Sir, never mind. Harlow straightened his tie, composure returning. Increase the pressure. Use our friends at the Black Serpents if necessary. I want that property, and I want the Martinez family gone from Oak Ridge. Reed hesitated. Sir, they're just a mother and daughter running a coffee shop. That's all you need to know, Harlow snapped. Make it happen. After Reed departed, Harlow remained staring at the photo on the tablet. His hand unconsciously moved to his left thigh, tracing the outline of an old scar beneath his expensive trousers. So Iron Wolf's daughter came home, he murmured. How perfect. That evening, Sarah tucked Lily into bed with extra care, reading 2 chapters from their current book instead of the usual one. When the girl finally drifted off, Sarah gently adjusted the red bandana she had mended and returned to her daughter. Lily insisted on keeping it under her pillow. Sarah then moved silently through the darkened house, checking windows and doors with military precision. In the kitchen, she pulled open the false-bottomed drawer again and removed her father's old address book. The leather was cracked, the pages yellowed, but the names and numbers inside represented a network that had once spanned the Pacific Northwest. She hesitated. Contacting these people meant reopening a chapter of her life she had deliberately closed. When she left for the Marines at 18, she had been determined to forge her own path away from her father's biker world. Even after returning to Oak Ridge, she had maintained that separation, focusing on building a normal life for Lily. But normal wasn't working anymore. Not when her daughter was coming home in tears, targeted because of her heritage, and because Sarah stood in the way of Richard Harlow's ambitions. Her father had always told her, the Iron Wolves protect their own. It was time to see if any of the old wolves still answered the call. Sarah dialed the first number. After 4 rings, a gruff female voice answered. This better be important at this hour. Sarah took a deep breath. Eleanor, this is Sarah Martinez. James Martinez's daughter. A long pause. Little Sarah Iron Wolf's girl. Yes, ma'am. Well, I'll be damned. The voice softened slightly. Heard you were back in town, running James's place. I am, and I need help. It's about the Iron Wolves. Another pause, longer this time. You still at the old house? Yes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Put on some coffee. Strong stuff, not that fancy espresso you serve tourists. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone, wondering if she had just made a terrible mistake, or the first step toward protecting her daughter. Exactly 19 minutes later, the rumble of a Harley-Davidson announced Eleanor Davidson's arrival. At 65, Steel Granny Davidson remained an imposing figure nearly 6 feet tall, with silver hair cut in a practical bob, weathered features, and the ramrod posture of someone who had spent decades defying expectations. She removed her helmet, revealing multiple earrings and a stern expression that softened when she saw Sarah waiting on the porch. "You look just like your mother," Eleanor said by way of greeting. "Beautiful and too good for this town." Sarah managed to smile. "Thank you for coming. When the daughter of Iron Wolf calls you, answer. That's how it works." Eleanor followed Sarah inside, her eyes taking in the home. "You've changed the place." "Had to make it right for Lily." "Your little girl." Eleanor nodded. "James showed me pictures before he passed. Said she was the future." In the kitchen, Sarah poured coffee into 2 mugs emblazoned with Marine Corps emblems. Eleanor approved with a nod before taking a long sip. "Now," Eleanor said, setting down her mug, "tell me why you're calling on the Iron Wolves after all these years of pretending we don't exist." Sarah winced at the accuracy of the observation. "I'm sorry about that. After Mom died, and then later when I joined the Marines, I guess I wanted to find my own path. Your father understood. He was proud of you, you know, kept every newspaper clipping about your service." Eleanor's gaze sharpened. "But that's not why I'm here at midnight drinking Marine coffee." Sarah explained the situation, VistaCorp's pressure to sell Lily's bullying, the appearance of the black serpents. Eleanor listened without interruption, her weathered face revealing nothing. "Richard Harlow," Eleanor finally said. "You're sure that's his name?" "Yes. Former Army colonel. Runs VistaCorp." Eleanor's expression darkened. "Your father would turn over in his grave." "You know him?" "Not personally, but your father did." Eleanor hesitated. "There's something you need to see." She led Sarah to the garage, moving with certainty through the dark space to a specific section of wall. "James showed me this once. Said if anything ever happened to him, someone should know." Eleanor pressed against a seemingly solid panel, which gave way to reveal a small, hidden compartment. Inside sat a metal lockbox. "He never told you about this?" Sarah shook her head, stunned. Typical James, always protecting his little girl. Eleanor pulled out the box. "Your father wasn't just a cafe owner who liked motorcycles, Sarah. The Iron Wolves weren't just drinking buddies." Inside the lockbox, Sarah found documents, photographs, and a sealed envelope with her name written in her father's distinctive handwriting. But what caught her eye was a faded photograph of 5 men in military uniforms standing before a helicopter. She recognized her father immediately, younger, but with the same proud stance. And next to him, unmistakably, stood Richard Harlow. "Special operations," Eleanor explained, "before there were official special forces. Your father and Harlow served together in the Army Rangers. Operation Granite Shadow, 1972. Officially, it never happened." Sarah stared at the photo, her world tilting. "Dad was a cook in the Army. That's what he always told me. That was his cover story. James was many things, but just a cook wasn't one of them." Eleanor pointed to the men in the photo, the original 5 Iron Wolves. Special Operations Team, 1st Motorcycle Club, 2nd. They came back from their mission with secrets. secrets that Harlow has spent decades trying to bury. Sarah looked up. What secrets? That's not for me to tell, but it's all in there. Eleanor nodded to the envelope. James knew someday Harlow might surface again. He prepared for it. The implication staggered Sarah. Her father, the gentle cafe owner who taught her to ride a bicycle and bake pies, had been living a double life she never suspected. And now his past had found its way to her door, threatening her daughter. "What do I do?" Sarah asked suddenly, feeling overwhelmed. "First, you read what your father left you. Then we call the pack." Eleanor's weathered face broke into a fierce smile. "The iron wolves have been dormant, not dead, and they protect their own. I'm not sure I want to drag Lily into a war with Harlow." "Sweetheart," Eleanor said gently, "she's already in it. The question is whether she faces it alone or with a pack at her back." Sarah fingered the sealed envelope, her father's final message to her. Everything she thought she knew about her family, about her quiet father who ran a cafe and occasionally rode motorcycles with his friends, was unraveling. How many of the original wolves are still around? Enough. Eleanor's eyes gleamed. More importantly, there's a second-generation children and grandchildren of the original members. They've been waiting for the call. Sarah thought of Lily, of the torn red bandana, and the tears on her daughter's face. She made her decision. Make the calls. The next morning, Sarah dropped Lily at school with extra reassurance and a newly repaired red bandana. "If anything happens, go straight to the office and call me," she instructed. "No trying to handle it yourself." Lily nodded solemnly. "Are you okay, Mom? You look tired." Sarah had spent the night reading her father's letters, absorbing revelations about a man she thought she had known completely. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about some changes we might need to make." "Are we selling the cafe?" Lily asked anxiously. "Never." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. "The Iron Rose is our legacy." At the cafe, Sarah moved through her morning routine automatically, her mind processing everything Eleanor had shared. The Iron Wolves had been more than a motorcycle club. They were a brotherhood, formed in combat, bound by secrets that powerful people wanted buried. And Richard Harlow was one of those people. The morning crowd thinned around 10, leaving only a few regulars nursing coffees. Sarah was refilling Frank Matthews's when the door opened, admitting a tall figure in an expensive suit. Richard Harlow himself. The cafe fell silent. Sarah straightened coffee pot still in hand as Harlow surveyed the establishment with clinical detachment. His gaze paused on the vintage Harley-Davidson displayed in the corner, then moved to the framed photographs on the wall, many featuring her father with his riding companions. "Ms. Martinez," Harlow's voice was cultured, confident. "I thought it was time we met personally." Sarah set down the coffee pot with deliberate calm. "Mr. Harlow, what can I get you? Just a moment of your time." He gestured to an empty table. "To discuss our mutual interests." Sarah nodded to Carol to take over the counter, then led Harlow to a corner table, choosing a seat that allowed her to keep the entire cafe in view, another habit from her military days. "I understand you've declined our offers for this property," Harlow began. "I respect your attachment to your family business, but I believe you may not fully appreciate what VistaCorp can do for Oak Ridge, the jobs we'll create, the economic revival we'll bring to a struggling community." "I appreciate economic opportunity," Sarah replied evenly. "But the Iron Rose isn't for sale." Harlow smiled thinly. "Everything has a price, Ms. Martinez." "Not everything, Mr. Harlow. Some things have value beyond money." Harlow's gaze drifted to the photographs on the wall again, lingering on one, showing her father in his Iron Wolves jacket. Something flashed in his eyes, recognition, and something darker. Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club, he read from the patch visible in the photo. Your father's organization, I believe. Just a group of friends who rode together. Is that what he told you? Harlow's smile never reached his eyes. Interesting. I would have thought James Iron Wolf Martinez would have been more forthcoming with his daughter. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her pulse quickened. Harlow knew her father's road name information that wasn't public knowledge. My father was a private man, she said carefully. Yes, he certainly kept his secrets. Harlow leaned forward slightly. Did he ever mention me? I wonder. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Should he have? Harlow studied her face. Interesting. So he didn't tell you everything. He stood abruptly. Consider our offer, Ms. Martinez. Oak Ridge is changing. Progress is inevitable. Those who stand in its way often find themselves marginalized. He placed a business card on the table. When you're ready to be reasonable, call me directly. As he turned to leave, his gaze fell on a small framed photo behind the counter, Sarah in her marine dress blues, receiving a commendation. He paused, genuinely surprised. You served 2 tours, Desert Storm. Something like respect flickered across his face. Interesting family tradition. Your father was a remarkable soldier, too, in his day. He was a cook, Sarah said automatically. Harlow actually laughed, though the sound held no warmth. Is that what he told you? Oh, Ms. Martinez, you have so much to learn about James Iron Wolf Martinez and the real Iron Wolves. His expression hardened. For your daughter's sake, I hope you learn quickly. With that parting shot, he left the cafe, leaving Sarah with a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. Frank Matthews appeared at her elbow moments later. What did Harlow want? To threaten me. Politely. Sarah showed him the business card. He knew my father, called him by his road name. Frank's weathered face registered concern. Sarah, be careful. VistaCorp has the town council in their pocket, and those black serpents aren't here for the scenery. I know. Sarah tucked the card away. Frank, what do you know about my father's military service? The sheriff's expression shuddered. Not my story to tell. You knew, didn't you, that he wasn't just a cook? Frank sighed heavily. Your father was a good man who did what his country asked of him. That's all that matters. It matters if it's putting my daughter in danger now. Sarah lowered her voice. Harlow mentioned Lily specifically. As a threat. Frank's face darkened. That crosses a line. Yes, it does. Sarah straightened her shoulders. I need to pick up Lily early today. Would you keep an eye on the cafe? The sheriff nodded. Always, and Sarah, whatever you're planning, don't do it alone. I won't, she promised. The Iron Wolves protect their own. Recognition and something like hope flickered in Frank's eyes. So the pack is gathering again. Sarah nodded once decision made. It's time. When Sarah arrived at school, she found chaos. An ambulance stood in the parking lot, its lights flashing. Parents huddled in worried groups, while teachers attempted to maintain order. Cold fear gripped Sarah's heart as she pushed through the crowd, searching for Lily's familiar face among the children being led to waiting cars. The principal intercepted her. Ms. Martinez, there you are. We've been trying to reach you. Where's Lily? What happened? An accident on the playground. Lily fell from the monkey bars. She's all right, just some bruises and a sprained wrist, but we sent her to the medical center as a precaution with Doc Miller. Sarah's military training kept her voice steady, even as rage built inside her. An accident. These things happen, the principal said quickly, too quickly. Children play, sometimes they fall. Was Jason Harlow involved? The principal's expression tightened. Ms. Martinez, I understand you're upset, but we can't blame other children without evidence. Where's the playground supervisor who witnessed this accident? Ms. Martinez, I really think. Where? Sarah's voice snapped with command, the tone that had once directed Marines in combat zones. The principal actually took a step back. Ms. Thompson is with the other children, but I assure you she saw nothing unusual. Sarah was already moving toward the medical center, her mind working furiously. Doc Miller would tell her the truth. And if Lily had been pushed, if this was another accident orchestrated by the Harlow boys. The bell on the door of the medical center jingled as Sarah burst in. Doc Miller looked up from the reception desk, his expression grim. She's in the back room, he said before Sarah could speak. Minor sprain, some bruising. She'll be fine physically. What happened? According to Lily, Jason Harlow dared her to climb to the top of the monkey bars. When she did, he and 2 other boys shook the structure until she fell. Doc's voice was tight with controlled anger. The playground supervisor was conveniently looking the other way. Sarah pushed through to the examination room where Lily sat on the edge of a bed, her left wrist wrapped in an elastic bandage. The red bandana was missing. Mom! Lily's face crumpled as Sarah embraced her. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here. Sarah held her daughter, mindful of the injured wrist. Doc Miller says you're going to be fine. They took Grandpa's bandana, Lily whispered against Sarah's shoulder. Jason grabbed it when I fell and they ran away with it. Sarah closed her eyes, containing her fury with effort. We'll get it back. They said you should sell the cafe or worse things would happen. Lily pulled back to look at her mother with worried eyes. Mom, who are these people? Why do they hate us? How could Sarah explain that her daughter had become a pawn in a decades-old conflict, that Richard Harlow was using children to wage his battle? They don't hate us, sweetheart. They want something we have, and they're used to getting what they want. Sarah smoothed Lily's hair. But they've never met anyone like the Martinez women before. Lily managed a small smile. Are we going to fight back? Sarah hesitated. Her military training, her protective instincts, and her father's legacy all pulled her toward confrontation. But she was also a mother who wanted to shield her child from violence and fear. We're going to stand our ground, she said carefully. And we're not going to do it alone. As if on cue, the bell over the medical center door jingled again. Eleanor Davidson entered, followed by a burly, older man with a white beard and massive arms covered in faded tattoos. Sarah, Eleanor called. Brought someone who wanted to see you. The man removed his Harley-Davidson cap, revealing kind blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled at Lily. Hello, little wolf, he said gently. I'm Big Mike. I rode with your grandpa back in the day. Sarah stared in astonishment. Michael, Big Mike Ryan, had been her father's best friend, a constant presence throughout her childhood. He had disappeared after her father's funeral, and Sarah had assumed he'd passed away as well. Uncle Mike, she whispered, using the honorary title she'd given him as a child. In the flesh. He opened his arms, and Sarah found herself embraced in a bear hug that smelled of motor oil and leather. Sorry it took so long for me to come back. Had some healing to do. When he released her, his expression turned serious. Eleanor called, said the pack needed to gather. His gaze moved to Lily's bandaged wrist, then back to Sarah. Said Iron Wolf's granddaughter was in trouble. It's complicated, Sarah began. No, it ain't. Big Mike's voice rumbled with certainty. Family's in trouble, the pack responds. Simple as that. He knelt with effort beside Lily's bed, bringing himself to her eye level. Your grandpa was my brother not by blood but by choice. That makes you family. Did you ride motorcycles with him? Lily asked, her injured wrist temporarily forgotten. Sure did, all over this country. Big Mike's eyes twinkled. Got stories that would curl your hair. And that bandana you wear, I was there when your grandpa got it. It's gone, Lily said sadly. The mean boys took it. Big Mike's smile never faltered, but something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Then we'll just have to get it back, won't we? He looked up at Sarah. I brought a few friends with me. They're waiting at the cafe. Old wolves, but their teeth are still sharp. Sarah felt a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. How many? 7 arrived today, more coming. He stood with a grunt. Words spreading through the old network. Iron wolves from 4 states are on their way. Mike, I don't want a war. Neither did your father, Big Mike cut in gently. Sometimes the war finds you anyway. He squeezed her shoulder. The wolves are gathering, Sarah. Question is, are you ready to lead them? Sarah looked at her daughter, at the brave face Lily was putting on, despite her fear and pain. She thought of the torn bandana of Harlow's veiled threats of the black serpents watching her cafe. Yes, she said finally. I'm ready. Big Mike nodded once, satisfaction in his weathered features. Then it's time you learned the truth about your father, about the Iron Wolves, and about Richard Harlow. His expression darkened. The past has come back around Sarah, and this time we're going to finish it properly. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of the Iron Rose Cafe as Sarah pulled up with Lily. The sight that greeted them made her pause with her hand on the ignition. 8 motorcycles, all vintage Harleys from the 70s and 80s, stood in a neat row beside the cafe. Their riders, men in their 60s and 70s, wearing faded leather vests, emblazoned with the Iron Wolves insignia, had arranged themselves at the outdoor tables. Regular customers mingled with them, curiosity evident as Carol served coffee. The atmosphere was surprisingly relaxed, punctuated by occasional laughter. These weren't the intimidating outlaws many would expect from a motorcycle club, but grandfatherly figures sharing stories. Are those Grandpa's friends? Lily asked, eyes wide with curiosity, despite her bandaged wrist. Yes, Sarah answered simply. Very old friends. As Sarah and Lily approached, the conversations quieted. The men rose with a respect Sarah recognized from military gatherings. Big Mike stepped forward, making introductions with formal gravity. Brothers, this is Sarah Martinez, daughter of our founder, Iron Wolf. And this young lady is Lily, his granddaughter. Each man nodded solemnly to Sarah, but their expressions softened when addressing Lily. They introduced themselves by road names that matched their appearances: Mechanic Doc Preacher, Scout Hammer Captain, and Sparky. Their weathered faces told stories of decades on the road, but their eyes remained sharp and alert. We remember you as a little girl, Mechanic said to Sarah, his massive hands gently holding a delicate coffee cup. Used to sit on your daddy's shoulders at club gatherings. I remember some of you. Sarah admitted memories surfacing of summer barbecues and Christmas parties where these men had been fixtures. She had known them as her father's riding friends, never suspecting the deeper bonds they shared. Preacher, a tall man with silver hair pulled into a neat ponytail, knelt before Lily. I understand somebody took something that belongs to you. His voice was gentle but carried the resonant quality of someone accustomed to public speaking. Lily nodded, touching her neck where the bandana should have been. Jason and his friends took Grandpa's bandana. That bandana has meaning, Preacher told her. It's not just cloth, it's history. Eleanor emerged from inside the cafe carrying a cardboard box. "Meeting room's ready," she announced. "Locals are getting curious, and we don't need an audience." The bikers rose with surprising agility for their age and filed inside each one, giving Lily an encouraging pat on the shoulder as they passed. Sarah instructed Carol to mind the front, while they used the cafe's back room, a space that had once served as the Iron Wolves' official meeting hall. The room had changed since Sarah renovated the cafe, now functioning primarily as storage. But the long oak table remained scarred from decades of meetings, celebrations, and occasional fistfights. The walls, once covered with motorcycle memorabilia and club photos, were now mostly bare, though faded outlines showed where frames had hung for years. Big Mike took position at the head of the table, then gestured for Sarah to take the seat her father's traditional place. She hesitated, then sat with Lily in the chair beside her. The others arranged themselves around the table with the practiced ease of men who had sat in the same configuration countless times before. "First order of business," Big Mike began formally, "is to acknowledge that Sarah Martinez, daughter of our founder, James Iron Wolf Martinez, has called the pack together, by the old rules that makes her acting president until a formal vote." Murmurs of agreement circled the table. "Second order," he continued, "is to recognize that an Iron Wolf has been dishonored." He looked at Lily. "The taking of colors, even a bandana, given to a wolf's descendant is an act that demands response." More murmurs, darker now. "Before we decide that response," Eleanor cut in, "Sarah needs to understand what she's stepped into." She opened the box she'd carried in and removed several thick manila folders. "These are copies of your father's records. The originals remain secure." Sarah accepted the folders, opening the top one to find military documents, photographs, and handwritten notes. The earliest papers dated from 1969, detailing her father's recruitment into a classified Army Rangers unit. "Operation Granite Shadow," Eleanor explained. "A cross-border mission during the Vietnam conflict. Your father was selected for his language skills and marksmanship. His team operated under deep cover, officially non-existent." Sarah's eyes widened as she scanned the documents. "This contradicts everything he ever told me about his service." "He had to lie," Mechanic said quietly. "Was part of his agreement with the government. Official records show him as a cook who never left base. Reality was very different." Sarah found a photograph of 5 young soldiers standing before a helicopter, weapons in hand, faces grim with determination. She recognized her father immediately, and there, standing beside him, was unmistakably a younger Richard Harlow. "The original 5 Iron Wolves," Big Mike explained. "Your father, James Martinez. Richard Harlow, our lieutenant. Thomas Reynolds, our communications specialist. William Davidson, our mechanic." "Davidson," Sarah looked up at Eleanor. "My husband," the older woman confirmed. "Killed in 1989. And Samuel Johnson, our medic," Big Mike finished. "Also deceased." Sarah studied the photo. "They formed the motorcycle club after coming home. The club was their cover," Preacher explained. "A way to maintain contact while appearing to be nothing more than veterans finding post-war camaraderie." Eleanor placed another folder before Sarah. "This one explains why." Inside were documents detailing Operation Granite Shadow's true purpose: to investigate reports that an American military contractor was selling weapons to both sides of the conflict, prolonging the war for profit. The team had uncovered evidence, but upon return, discovered the contractor had high-level Pentagon connections that made conventional justice impossible. The weapons contractor was Harrison Reed, Big Mike said grimly. Richard Harlow's father-in-law. Pieces began falling into place in Sarah's mind. So my father and his team formed the Iron Wolves to pursue justice outside official channels. Initially, Eleanor confirmed. But it evolved. They discovered other instances of corruption endangering soldiers and civilians. The Iron Wolves became vigilantes, of a sort veterans using their skills to protect the vulnerable when official channels failed. Reed died before they could expose him, Big Mike continued. But they scattered his operation, cost him millions. Harlow never forgave your father. He'd married Reed's daughter, was set to inherit the business. They had a final confrontation in 1975, Mechanic added. Harlow swore revenge disappeared for years. We thought he was dead until he resurfaced in the late 80s with a new name and identity. By then, he'd rebuilt his fortune through various enterprises, not all of them legal. Lily, who had been listening with unusual stillness, suddenly spoke up. Is that why Mr. Harlow wants our cafe revenge? The adults exchanged glances, impressed by her perception. Partly, Sarah answered carefully, but also because he needs this property for his resort. No, Big Mike corrected. He doesn't need it. The resort is just cover. He wants it because it was Iron Wolf's, and he wants to hurt you because you're Iron Wolf's daughter. The room fell silent as Sarah processed this. Her quiet life in Oak Ridge, her efforts to build something normal for Lily after years of military service and loss, all threatened by a decades-old vendetta she hadn't known existed. There's more, Eleanor said quietly, sliding the final folder across the table. About VistaCorp. This folder contained financial records, property transactions, and surveillance photos. The documents compiled by various Iron Wolves over the years painted a disturbing picture of VistaCorp as a sophisticated money laundering operation. The luxury resorts and properties were profitable, but their primary purpose was cleaning money from weapons deals and other illegal enterprises. Your father was still tracking Harlow when he died, Eleanor explained. Heart attack took him before he could compile enough evidence for the authorities. Sarah closed the folder, feeling the weight of her father's unfinished mission. So this isn't just about a cafe or a bandana. No, Big Mike confirmed. Harlow recognized your name when VistaCorp targeted Oak Ridge. This became personal for him. The Black Serpents aren't here just to intimidate property owners. They're here for payback against the Iron Wolves. And when he realized you had a daughter, he found his leverage. Sarah finished, her jaw tightening as she looked at Lily. What do we do now, Mom? Lily asked quietly. Every protective instinct in Sarah screamed to grab her daughter and flee Oak Ridge. But she was a Marine trained to advance, not retreat. And now, looking around at these aging warriors who had answered her call, she realized she had inherited not just a cafe, but a legacy and responsibility. First, she said with newfound resolve, we get your bandana back, then we stop Harlow before he can hurt anyone else. Approving nods circled the table. The young Harlow boy who took it, Captain spoke up. He'll have it at their house. Mansion on the hill they're renting. We can't just break in, Sarah objected. No need, Preacher smiled. We've been gathering intelligence since Eleanor called. Harlow's boys have a standing tennis lesson at the country club every Thursday afternoon tomorrow. House will be minimally staffed. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You've been busy. Iron Wolves take care of their own, Mechanic said simply. Always have. We need more than the bandana, Sarah decided. We need evidence linking Harlow to the Black Serpents and any illegal activities, something we can take to federal authorities. There's a safe in Harlow's home office, Hammer offered. Scout spotted it when he posed as a maintenance worker last week. Sarah shook her head in amazement. You've all been preparing for this confrontation for years. Decades, Big Mike corrected. Your father knew Harlow would resurface eventually. We maintained the network, kept watch. When Eleanor called, we were ready. But we're old now, Scout added realistically. Our skills aren't what they were. We need your expertise, Sarah. Sarah understood then why they had given her the president's chair. They weren't just honoring her as James Martinez's daughter, they needed her military training and leadership. All right, she said, making her decision. Tomorrow we retrieve the bandana and whatever evidence we can find. Simultaneously, we need surveillance on the Black Serpents. I want to know their numbers, weapons, and movements. Already in progress, Eleanor confirmed. And I've reached out to the second-generation Iron Wolves children of original members who took the oath. 20 are en route from various states. Good, Sarah turned to Lily. You'll stay with Doc Miller tomorrow while we handle this. Lily looked disappointed, but didn't argue. The gravity of the situation hadn't been lost on her. As the meeting continued, Sarah outlined a detailed plan drawing on her military experience. The older wolves listened with respect, occasionally offering suggestions based on their knowledge of Oak Ridge and their specialized skills. What emerged was a coordinated operation that would make any military commander proud. What none of them noticed was Frank Matthews standing in the doorway, silently observing. When Sarah finally spotted him, the room fell silent. "Sheriff," she acknowledged cautiously. Frank stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Planning something illegal in my jurisdiction, Sarah. Reclaiming stolen property," she replied evenly, "and gathering evidence of criminal activity." Frank studied the assembled wolves' recognition flickering as he identified faces from years past. "Iron wolves riding again? Never thought I'd see the day." He removed his sheriff's badge, placing it on the table. "My shift ended 10 minutes ago. I'm just Frank, now, son of Thomas Reynolds, one of the original 5. Sarah's eyes widened. "You're second-generation Iron Wolf," Frank confirmed. "Your father inducted me himself in 1982. He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a faded wolf tattoo. "I've maintained my oath while upholding the law. Sometimes it's been a difficult balance." He took a vacant chair. "Now, tell me how I can help protect James Martinez's granddaughter while maintaining plausible deniability in my official capacity." Dawn found Sarah standing on her porch, watching the rising sun illuminate the mountains surrounding Oak Ridge. She had slept little, her mind processing revelations about her father and planning the day's operation. The rumble of approaching motorcycles broke the morning stillness. Eleanor arrived first on her meticulously maintained Harley Softail, followed by Big Mike and the others. They gathered in Sarah's driveway, speaking quietly as they reviewed their roles. Sarah had dressed practically in jeans boots and a dark jacket. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and for the first time in years, she moved with the focused precision of a Marine on mission rather than a cafe owner. "Lily's still asleep," she told them. "Doc Miller will pick her up in an hour. The cafe stays closed today." Eleanor handed her a small earpiece. "For communication. We may be old school, but we've upgraded some equipment over the years." Sarah inserted the device, reminded of similar operations in the desert. "Check, check," she murmured, receiving confirmations from the others. "One more thing," Big Mike said, producing a leather vest from his saddlebag. "Your father wanted you to have this when you were ready." Sarah recognized it immediately, her father's Iron Wolves colors, the president's vest, with its distinctive patches, and the name Iron Wolf emblazoned across the back. She had never expected to wear it, had deliberately chosen a different path. "I don't know if—" "Just for today," Big Mike said gently. "The Iron Wolves need their leader, and the others arriving need to recognize you." After a moment's hesitation, Sarah slipped it on. The leather was worn soft with age, but still sturdy, carrying her father's scent faintly after all these years. It settled on her shoulders like a mantle of responsibility. The operation began precisely at 10 o'clock. Sarah, Eleanor, and Scout approached the Harlow residence from the front, dressed as property appraisers with convincing identification Eleanor had produced. The housekeeper, recognizing the VistaCorp logo on their clipboard, admitted them without question. "Mr. Harlow mentioned you might be coming," she said, leading them to the study. "He's not here, but you're welcome to take your measurements." Once alone, they moved with practiced efficiency. Scout kept watch while Eleanor photographed documents left carelessly on Harlow's desk. Sarah located the safe behind a landscape painting just where Hammer had indicated. "Standard model," she murmured. "But I can't crack it without tools and time we don't have." "Look around for keys," Eleanor suggested. "Rich men are often overconfident." Sarah searched methodically, finding nothing, until she examined the desk chair. There, taped under the seat, was a small key. "Not for the safe," she noted, "but worth checking." The key opened the bottom desk drawer, revealing a laptop and external hard drive. Better than the safe, Sarah decided, photographing them in place before closing the drawer. They couldn't risk taking anything yet, but now they knew where to focus when they returned. Meanwhile, Scout had slipped away to search the bedrooms. He returned moments later, triumphant. "Found it," he whispered, producing the red bandana from his pocket. Sarah examined it definitely, lilies with the embroidered wolf's head in the corner. "Good work. Now, let's finish the measurements and leave normally." They were nearly complete when voices sounded in the hallway, Jason Harlow and his friends returning unexpectedly early. Scout quickly pocketed his measuring tape as the study door swung open. Jason Harlow, a 12-year-old with his father's cold eyes and entitled demeanor, froze at the sight of strangers in his father's study. "Who are you?" he demanded. Sarah stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "VistaCorp Property Assessment Team. Your housekeeper let us in." Jason's eyes narrowed suspiciously, then focused on Sarah's face. Recognition dawned. "You're Lily's mom, the cafe lady." "Ms. Martinez is doing some consulting work for us," Eleanor improvised smoothly. "Evaluating local property values." Jason clearly didn't believe them, but at 12 he lacked the authority to challenge adults directly. "Whatever, just don't touch my stuff." He stomped out, his friends following. "Time to go," Sarah murmured. "He'll call his father." They exited normally, thanking the housekeeper and returning to their vehicle. Once clear of the property, Sarah contacted the others. "Phase 1 complete. We have the bandana and confirmation of potential evidence. Jason made us, so expect accelerated timeline." The day progressed with military precision. While Sarah's team had been at the Harlow residence, others had been monitoring the Black Serpents, who had established a base at the Ridge Motel on the outskirts of town. Mechanic and Hammer, posing as traveling veterans, had counted 17 members present, with more expected. By afternoon, the first of the second-generation Iron Wolves began arriving in Oak Ridge, men and women in their 40s and 50s, children of the original members who had taken the oath to uphold their parents' legacy. They came individually and in small groups, checking in with Eleanor at a designated meeting point outside town. Sarah was reviewing surveillance photos at the Iron Rose when Frank Matthews entered through the back door, his expression grave. "Black Serpents are mobilizing," he reported without preamble. 4 just rode past the cafe, checking it out. "Another group was asking about you at the gas station." "Harlow's making his move," Sarah concluded. "Jason must have called him." "Not just that." Frank handed her his phone, showing a notification from the town clerk. "Emergency town council meeting called for tomorrow morning. Single agenda item, eminent domain proceedings against your property." Sarah stared at the screen. "They can't do that without due process." They can start the process, Frank corrected. Harlow's called in political favors. 3 council members are in his pocket. How much time does that give us? Legal proceedings would take months normally, but if they declare it an economic emergency measure, Frank shook his head. They could expedite significantly. Sarah considered their options. We need to accelerate too. Is Lily safe with Doc Miller? Safer than here. I have a deputy parked nearby unofficially. Sarah nodded her thanks, then touched her earpiece. All teams' new timeline. Harlow's moving against us legally, and the Serpents are active. Rendezvous at backup location Alpha at 1800 hours. By evening 43, iron wolves had gathered at an abandoned lumber mill outside Oak Ridge, a property that ironically had been owned by James Martinez as a club investment. The cavernous space, once filled with machinery for processing timber, now housed motorcycles and determined men and women preparing for confrontation. Sarah stood on an elevated platform that had once held the mill supervisor's office, surveying the assembled wolves. The original members, now dubbed First Generation or First Gen, sat in a place of honor near the front. Behind them, the second-gen members brought diverse skills from their civilian lives. Military veterans like Sarah, but also lawyers, doctors, mechanics, and even a few law enforcement officers from other jurisdictions. Most had never met Sarah, knowing her only as Iron Wolf's daughter who joined the Marines. She felt their curious, assessing gazes as she prepared to address them. Big Mike joined her on the platform. "They're waiting for you to prove yourself," he said quietly. "Show them you're your father's daughter." Sarah nodded, then stepped forward. The room quieted immediately. "I didn't ask to be here," she began honestly. "I left the Iron Wolves behind when I joined the Marines. I wanted my own path, my own identity. When I returned to Oak Ridge, I came as a cafe owner and a mother, not as the daughter of Iron Wolf." She paused, looking over the assembled faces. But Richard Harlow didn't see a cafe owner when he came to Oak Ridge. He saw James Martinez's daughter. He saw a chance for revenge against the Iron Wolves. And he targeted my 9-year-old daughter to get it. Her voice hardened, and those who had served recognized the steel of a combat veteran in her tone. "I've spent the day studying the evidence you've all gathered over the years. VistaCorp isn't just a development company. It's a sophisticated criminal enterprise laundering money from illegal weapons sales. The luxury resort planned for Oak Ridge is designed to clean millions in dirty cash." She activated a projector displaying documents and photographs on the wall behind her. "Harlow's operation has hurt communities across 3 states. When they arrive, they promise economic revival. What follows is corruption, environmental damage, and a plague of drugs that mysteriously appears once they control local real estate." Sarah advanced through the slides, showing before and after photos of towns that had welcomed VistaCorp developments. The pattern is clear. First, economic pressure to sell. Then, for holdouts, escalating intimidation. The Black Serpents are Harlow's enforcers. They create problems that only VistaCorp's security services can solve, driving out original residents and businesses. She clicked to a final slide, a photograph of her father and the original 5 Iron Wolves. 40 years ago, 5 men formed this club to stop corruption that the law couldn't or wouldn't touch. They stood against men like Harlow, who profit from others' suffering. Today we face the same enemy for the same reasons. Sarah removed her father's vest, holding it before her. "I didn't ask for this responsibility, but my daughter was targeted because of who her grandfather was. Her bandana, a symbol of the Iron Wolves, was taken to send a message. Today we recovered it." She held up the red cloth. "Tomorrow we send our own message." She put the vest back on with deliberate care. I am not James Iron Wolf Martinez. I'm Sarah Martinez, Marine Corps veteran and mother. I run a cafe, not a motorcycle club. But today, I'm asking the Iron Wolves to ride once more, not for revenge, but for justice. Not just for my daughter, but for this town and others that could fall to Harlow's operation. A murmur of approval ran through the crowd. I have a plan, Sarah continued, that uses our numbers and skills without crossing legal lines. We'll gather evidence for federal authorities while protecting Oak Ridge. If you're willing to follow Iron Wolf's daughter, even temporarily, I'll lead. If not, there's no shame in riding away now. She waited, half expecting some to leave. Instead, Big Mike stood. The Iron Wolves follow Sarah Martinez, he declared formally. All in favor. The response was unanimous, a chorus of agreement that echoed through the cavernous mill. Sarah nodded once, emotion threatening to overcome her military composure. Then, let's begin. Richard Harlow slammed his fist on the conference table, causing his project managers to flinch. How did they get into my house? Where was security? They had convincing identification, his assistant explained nervously. The housekeeper thought, I don't care what she thought. Harlow cut him off. Martinez's daughter was in my study. Do you understand what she could have found? The assembled VistaCorp executives exchanged uneasy glances. Few knew the true nature of their company's operations, and fewer still knew of Harlow's personal vendetta against the Martinez family and the Iron Wolves. The town council meeting is confirmed for tomorrow, Jason Reed, his project manager, offered. We'll begin eminent domain proceedings against the Iron Rose Cafe. Our legal team says, legal proceedings take time, Harlow interrupted. Time we no longer have if Sarah Martinez has connected the dots. He turned to a hard-faced man seated in the corner, Vincent Snake Williams, president of the Black Serpents. How many of your men are in town now? 28, Snake answered. Another 15 arriving tonight. I want that cafe gone, Harlow ordered. Tonight. Make it look like an accident. Electrical fire gas leak, I don't care. Snake nodded. And the Martinez woman and her kid? Harlow hesitated. Despite his ruthlessness, he had always avoided direct violence against women and children. It was one of the few lines he hadn't crossed in his decades of corruption. Just the building, he decided. Make sure they're not inside. And if they are, Harlow's jaw tightened. Get them out first. I want Iron Wolf's legacy destroyed, not a child harmed. Snake seemed disappointed, but nodded agreement. We'll handle it. What about these other bikers showing up in town? My boys report seeing Iron Wolf's colors for the first time in years. Old men reliving their glory days. Harlow dismissed, though a flicker of concern crossed his face. They're no threat. Some don't look so old, Snake persisted. And they're organized. My scouts counted over 40 bikes at that abandoned lumber mill outside town. This information visibly disturbed Harlow. 40, the original club, never had more than 20 members. Second generation, Reed suggested. Children of original members. Harlow paced the conference room, memories of his confrontation with James Martinez decades earlier surfacing. The Iron Wolves had been formidable enemies, then disciplined veterans with specialized skills and a rigid code of honor that made them unpredictable compared to common criminals. Change of plans, he announced finally. We accelerate everything. Snake, assemble your full force. I want a show of strength that will make these Iron Wolves think twice about interfering. Surround the cafe tonight, but don't move until I give the order. He turned to Reed. Contact our friends in state government. I want state troopers here tomorrow to keep peace during the council meeting. And prepare the documentation for federal authorities showing the Iron Wolves as a criminal organization threatening our legitimate business. Sir, Reed objected hesitantly. Fabricating evidence against veterans could backfire. Did I ask for your opinion? Harlow snapped. Iron Wolf Martinez destroyed my father-in-law's business and stole my rightful inheritance. His daughter will not do the same to me. His face flushed with decades of stored rage. I've spent 30 years building Vista Corp. I won't let it be undermined by ghosts from the past. After the others filed out, Harlow remained alone in the conference room staring at a satellite image of Oak Ridge on the wall screen. He zoomed in on the Iron Rose Cafe, its distinctive neon sign visible even in the aerial photo. "You should have stayed away, Sarah Martinez," he murmured. "Your father knew better than to challenge me directly." He touched his leg absently, feeling the old scar beneath his trousers, a permanent reminder of his last confrontation with James Iron Wolf Martinez in 1975. The wound had healed, but the humiliation had festered for decades. Darkness had fallen over Oak Ridge when Sarah returned to the Iron Rose Cafe with Eleanor and Big Mike. They entered through the back, keeping lights minimal as they settled around the old meeting table. Surveillance teams report black serpents mobilizing, Eleanor announced, checking messages on her phone. At least 30 gathered at the motel, with more arriving hourly. "They'll move tonight," Sarah predicted. "Harlow won't wait for legal proceedings if he thinks we've found incriminating evidence." "The cafe is the obvious target," Big Mike agreed. "Symbolic value," Sarah nodded. "Which is why we're not defending it. We're setting a trap." She unfolded a map of Oak Ridge, marking positions with a red pen. First-gen teams will maintain surveillance on Black Serpent's movements. Second-gen teams will position here, here, and here, covering approaches, but remaining invisible. "And the cafe?" Eleanor asked. "Empty. Security cameras running, but no personnel. We let them come, document their actions, and catch them red-handed. Meanwhile, our team will be at Vista Corp headquarters accessing their servers." Big Mike looked concerned. "You're willing to sacrifice your father's cafe?" Sarah's expression hardened. "Buildings can be rebuilt. Evidence against Harlow is our priority." A soft knock at the back door interrupted them. Frank Matthews entered, still in his sheriff's uniform, his expression grim. "Just intercepted police radio traffic," he reported. "Anonymous tip about illegal weapons at the Iron Rose. 2 patrol cars en route for a search." Harlow's creating pretext, Sarah realized. "Plant weapons, then discover them during a legitimate search." "I can delay them 15 minutes max," Frank said. "After that, I'll lose plausible deniability." Sarah gathered the maps quickly. "That's enough. Eleanor, alert all teams. Operation shifts to Contingency Plan Delta. Rally points remain unchanged." As they prepared to leave, Frank caught Sarah's arm. "Lily's asking for you. Doc Miller says she won't sleep until she talks to her mom." Sarah hesitated, torn between operational security and maternal instinct. "Patch her through on secure channel." Moments later, Lily's voice came through Sarah's earpiece, small but determined. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just busy with some work. You should be sleeping." "The other kids at school said bad men are coming to hurt our cafe." Lily's voice trembled slightly. "Is that true?" Sarah closed her eyes, wishing she could shield her daughter from all this. "Some people might try to damage the cafe, yes, but we're prepared for them." "Did you get Grandpa's bandana back?" "Yes, Scout found it for you. It's safe." A pause. "Mom, the Iron Wolves are the good guys, right? Like in my superhero comics?" Sarah thought about the complicated history she'd learned about vigilante justice and the thin line between right and wrong. But to a 9-year-old, some things needed to be simpler. "Yes, sweetheart. They're the good guys. They protect people who can't protect themselves. Like you did in the Marines. Something like that. Then I want to be an Iron Wolf too, Lily declared with 9-year-old certainty. I want to help. Despite the tension, Sarah smiled. You already are Lily. You're Iron Wolf's granddaughter. That makes you Pack. After ending the call, Sarah turned to find the others watching her with varying expressions of approval and concern. She has her grandfather's spirit, Big Mike observed. And her mother's determination, Eleanor added. Sarah checked her watch. We need to move. Frank, once we're clear, proceed with your official duties. Remember, you know nothing about Iron Wolf's involvement. Just a coincidence that the town's suddenly full of middle-aged bikers on vintage Harleys, Frank said dryly. Exactly. Sarah zipped up her jacket over her father's vest. Iron Wolves mount up. Operation Delta is a go. Vincent Snake Williams watched with satisfaction as his black serpents assembled in the motel parking lot. 43 riders each with a criminal record, each owing personal loyalty to him. They mounted their motorcycles in disciplined formation, a far cry from the chaotic image most people had of outlaw bikers. Remember, he instructed them, intimidation first. Circle the cafe, make noise, scare anyone inside. Then the advance team plants the incendiary devices at these points. He indicated a diagram of the Iron Rose Cafe. When everyone's clear, we light it up. What about resistance? Asked his sergeant-at-arms, a massive man known as Bulldozer. Intelligence says it's minimal, Snake assured him. The old Iron Wolves are decades past their prime. Most can barely climb onto their Harleys without help. This brought appreciative laughter from the assembled serpents. And the Martinez woman, former Marine, Snake acknowledged. Could be trouble, but she has the kid to worry about. Our sources say they left town this afternoon. He surveyed his men with pride. Most motorcycle clubs, even outlaw ones, avoided the kind of direct criminal action they were undertaking tonight. But the Black Serpents had evolved beyond traditional MC activities into mercenary work for clients like Harlow, who needed deniable muscle. Move out, he ordered. Maintain calm discipline. The Serpents roared from the parking lot in tight formation, headlights cutting through the night as they headed toward Main Street. They deliberately passed through residential areas, the thundering engines setting off car alarms and bringing worried residents to windows. Snake led them onto Main Street at 11:30, finding it deserted as expected in the small town. The Iron Rose Cafe stood dark and quiet, its vintage neon sign glowing in the night. He signaled for his men to surround the building, creating a perimeter of motorcycles. "Advance team," he radioed. "Check for occupants." 4 men dismounted, approaching the cafe with practiced caution. Finding the front door locked, they moved to the back, where the kitchen entrance yielded to simple lock-picking tools. They disappeared inside flashlights, probing the darkness. Minutes passed. Snake grew impatient. "Report," he demanded into his radio. Silence. "Advance team report status." Nothing but static answered him. Snake signaled to Bulldozer. "Something's wrong. Take 4 men, check it out." Bulldozer and his team had just reached the cafe's back door when floodlights suddenly illuminated the entire street, bathing the Black Serpents in harsh white light. Simultaneously, the rumble of dozens of motorcycle engines shattered the night as Iron Wolves materialized from side streets and alleys, emerging from positions where they'd been waiting in darkness. Snake squinted against the glare, counting silhouettes. 20, 30, 50 motorcycles now surrounded his serpents in a reversal of their own tactic. The Iron Wolves formed a perfect circle, headlights pointing inward like an arena of judgment. Through his squint, Snake made out the riders, not the decrepit old men he'd expected, but hard-looking individuals in their 40s and 50s, many with military-style crew cuts, and the disciplined posture of veterans. Their bikes were vintage, but immaculately maintained, gleaming in the floodlights. From their midst rode a single figure who halted directly before Snake. Sarah Martinez removed her helmet, her features composed and confident in the harsh light. She wore her father's Iron Wolves vest over tactical gear, the president's patch clearly visible. "Vincent Williams," she called, her voice carrying clearly. "You and your men are surrounded. The advance team you sent into my cafe is currently secured by former Marine MPs. Every action you've taken tonight has been recorded on multiple cameras and transmitted to secure servers." Snake glanced around, noticing for the first time the small cameras positioned strategically on neighboring buildings. "This is private property," Sarah continued. "You have no legitimate reason to be here. I'm giving you one chance to leave Oak Ridge peacefully. After that, the footage of your attempted arson goes to federal authorities." Snake forced a laugh. "You think you scare us? We've got 43 riders here." "I count 57 Iron Wolves currently visible," Sarah replied calmly, "with another 32 in reserve positions, former military law enforcement and hard-working citizens who don't appreciate criminals threatening their communities." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Snake's face. The Iron Wolves' ambush had been perfectly executed, suggesting a level of organization and discipline his own club couldn't match. "We work for VistaCorp," he blustered. "Legitimate security contractors." "Interesting," Sarah's tone remained conversational. "Because according to documents we've acquired, VistaCorp has no official relationship with the Black Serpent's MC. In fact, Mr. Harlow would probably be distressed to learn you're claiming employment with his company while attempting arson." She reached inside her vest and removed a small recording device. "Perhaps you'd like to clarify who exactly ordered you to burn down my cafe tonight?" Snake's eyes narrowed as he realized the trap she'd set. If he implicated Harlow, he created evidence of criminal conspiracy. If he claimed independent action, he lost Harlow's protection. "This isn't over," he growled, signaling his men to start their engines. "No," Sarah agreed, "it isn't. But whatever happens next, Richard Harlow will sacrifice you to save himself. Think about that on your ride out of town." For a tense moment, it seemed Snake might order an attack despite the odds. Then reason prevailed. He revved his engine in frustration and led his serpents in retreat, breaking through the Iron Wolves' circle at the point Sarah deliberately left open. As the last black serpent disappeared into the night, Big Mike pulled alongside Sarah. "They'll regroup and return with reinforcements," he warned. "I'm counting on it," Sarah replied. "Phase 1 complete. They took the bait." She touched her earpiece. "Team Alpha proceed to VistaCorp headquarters. Team Bravo maintain surveillance on Black Serpents. All other teams rally at secondary positions." Eleanor approached on her Harley. Sarah Frank just radioed. Police search of the cafe revealed nothing, but they're posting officers outside for protection. He can't prevent it without raising suspicion. "That's fine," Sarah assured her. "The cafe's just a building. The real battle is for evidence." She gazed down Main Street, where the Black Serpents had disappeared, then at the assembled Iron Wolves waiting for her command. In just days, her life had transformed from quiet cafe owner to military commander, once more leading an operation against an enemy who had targeted her family. "Phase 2 begins now," she announced. "Ride carefully, watch each other's backs. Tomorrow, Richard Harlow learns why you don't threaten an Iron Wolf's cub." Dawn painted the eastern sky with streaks of crimson and gold as Sarah Martinez stood atop Miller's Ridge, overlooking Oak Ridge. The small town lay nestled in the valley below morning mist, clinging to rooftops and drifting between buildings like gentle ghosts. From this vantage point, she could see the Iron Rose Cafe on Main Street, Two police cruisers still parked outside as Frank had warned. She lifted a pair of high-powered binoculars, scanning methodically. VistaCorp headquarters in the renovated Victorian glowed with lights, despite the early hour Harlow and his team clearly working through the night after the Black Serpent's humiliation. At the Ridge Motel on the outskirts, unusual activity suggested the Serpents were regrouping. Sarah's earpiece crackled. "Alpha Team reporting," came Eleanor's voice. "Server access complete. Data package transmitted to secure cloud storage. Evidence is substantial." "Acknowledged," Sarah responded. "Return to rally point." She lowered the binoculars, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. While the confrontation with the Black Serpents had drawn attention, a smaller team led by Eleanor, including two Iron Wolves with cybersecurity backgrounds, had infiltrated VistaCorp headquarters through a maintenance entrance. Their mission accessing the company's servers and extracting evidence of money laundering and illegal activities. The operation had required precision timing and detailed intelligence provided by various Iron Wolves who had been tracking Harlow for years. Sarah had coordinated it with the same methodical care she had once applied to Marine Corps operations in combat zones. Big Mike's Harley rumbled up the dirt road behind her, the veteran biker dismounting with a grunt that betrayed his age. Despite having ridden through the night on surveillance duty, his eyes remained alert and focused. "Serpent sent riders out on 4 highways," he reported. "According to our roadside spotters, they've already made contact with other chapters. Counting their original 43 intelligence suggests they'll have close to 100 riders by nightfall." Timeline, Sarah asked, her mind already calculating defense scenarios. Scout's latest report confirms 44 new arrivals already checked into motels across the county. The rest should arrive by early evening. Big Mike handed her a paper with locations marked. "Snake's Pride took a serious hit last night. Word in outlaw circles is he's offering triple pay for anyone willing to join this operation." Sarah studied the map, noting the dispersed lodging pattern of the reinforcements, a tactical choice meant to prevent the Iron Wolves from containing them all at once. "That's more organized than I expected," she acknowledged. "Town council meeting starts in 3 hours. By then, our evidence package should be in federal hands." "You really think the feds will move fast enough?" Big Mike asked. "Harlow's political connections run deeper than we initially thought. Our intelligence team uncovered financial ties to 2 state senators and a federal judge." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Which is precisely why we have contingency plans. If legal channels fail, we'll need to be ready for anything." She turned to face him. "Has there been any word from Team Charlie?" "Just checked in. The package for Lily is ready for delivery exactly as requested." Big Mike's weathered face softened slightly. "Charlie also reports they've secured the exit routes in case we need to evacuate civilians." Sarah nodded, grateful for the thoroughness. The Iron Wolves had adapted their military experience to protect not just her family, but the entire town, if necessary. "I keep thinking about what my father would say about all this," she confessed quietly, gazing at the town below. "Bringing back the Iron Wolves, putting Lily in the middle of a war with Harlow." Big Mike regarded her thoughtfully. "You know what James would say. He'd say you've done exactly what he hoped you would: protect your family, but do it smarter than he did. He kept you in the dark, thinking isolation was protection. You're giving Lily something he never gave you: truth." Sarah traced the president's patch on her vest, feeling the worn leather beneath her fingertips. "When this is over, assuming we succeed, 1 operation at a time, Marine," Big Mike interrupted gently. "First, we secure Oak Ridge. Then, whatever comes next, that's your call. No expectations, no obligations." Sarah started to respond when her earpiece crackled again. "Perimeter alert." 3 Black Serpent scouts approaching from the North Ridge. Without hesitation, Sarah dropped to a prone position, unslinging the rifle case she'd carried with her. With practiced movements, she assembled the precision rifle, a civilian version of the weapon she'd once used in military operations. Through the scope, she spotted 3 motorcycles navigating the Forest Service road that provided a view into the valley. "They're mapping our positions," she murmured to Big Mike, who had taken cover behind a boulder. "Setting up for tonight." "Take the shot," he asked, surprising her. Sarah adjusted her scope. "We're not starting a shooting war, Mike, but I can certainly send a message." She exhaled slowly, then squeezed the trigger. The report echoed across the valley as her bullet struck precisely where she'd aimed a tree trunk 6 inches from the lead rider's head. The scouts immediately scattered, engines revving as they retreated down the hillside. "Message received, I'd say," Big Mike observed with a hint of admiration. "They'll be back," Sarah replied, already breaking down her rifle, "with numbers and a plan. But now they know we've got elevated positions and precision capabilities." She touched her earpiece. "All units be advised. Black Serpent scouts are actively mapping our positions. Maintain cover protocols." The distant rumble of motorcycles drew their attention as several iron wolves approached the ridge. Second-generation members who had conducted night surveillance from various positions around Oak Ridge. They parked in a neat semicircle, removing helmets as they gathered to report. Sarah recognized the discipline of military veterans among them. Like her, many had followed their father's footsteps into service before civilian life. Unlike her, they had maintained their connections to the Iron Wolves network over the years. "Perimeter reports," she requested, slipping the rifle case back over her shoulder. A former Army Ranger designated as Scout spoke first. "VistaCorp's security increased overnight. 2 black SUVs arrived at 0400 hours, delivering 8 men with private contractor profiles, former Special Forces based on their movement patterns. They're deploying surveillance equipment around headquarters and key town locations. They've also upgraded their communications, added a woman in her 40s, a telecommunications expert who had served in Air Force intelligence. Encrypted channels signal jammers in their vehicles. They're preparing for something more sophisticated than a simple intimidation run. Town council members have all received early morning visitors," reported another wolf, who worked as a court clerk in a neighboring county. VistaCorp representatives delivering what appeared to be document packets, likely final briefing materials for the eminent domain vote. Mayor Wilson was the only one who refused his visitor. Each report built a clearer picture of Harlow's response to the previous night's events. He was accelerating his plans, bringing more resources to bear, preparing for both legal and physical confrontation. "And our numbers?" Sarah asked. 87 Iron Wolves now in position," Big Mike answered with pride. "Another 25 confirmed en route." Word spread faster than expected once they heard Iron Wolf's daughter had called the pack. "We've also gained local support," Scout added. 28 veterans from Oak Ridge and neighboring towns have volunteered to assist with civilian protection. Franks deputized 12 of them to maintain legal cover. Sarah considered this information, weighing options and contingencies, as she had been trained to do as a Marine officer. The Iron Wolves awaited her decision with respectful patience. "Maintain surveillance positions," she finally ordered. "No direct engagement with Black Serpents or VistaCorp security unless civilian safety is threatened. Our priority remains evidence collection and legal channels." She checked her watch. "I'll attend the town council meeting personally. Team leaders synchronize communications and prepare to execute Phase 3 if Harlow forces our hand." "And the contingency for Lily?" Eleanor asked, her voice revealing genuine concern for the child. Sarah's expression hardened momentarily. "Doc Miller has agreed to take her to his brother's cabin on Blue Lake, if things escalate. 3 first-gen wolves will escort them." She paused, the conflict evident in her eyes. "I hate having her leave town, but I can't focus on protecting Oak Ridge if I'm worried about Lily being in the crossfire." As the others moved to carry out their assignments, Sarah remained a moment longer watching the town where she had hoped to build a quiet life with her daughter. In just days, everything had changed. Old secrets uncovered, her father's legacy laid bare, and now a confrontation that would decide Oak Ridge's future. "One more thing," she called after the departing Iron Wolves. "Whatever happens today, remember what we stand for." The code my father established wasn't about vengeance or territory. It was about standing between the innocent and those who would harm them. We defend, we protect, we safeguard. But we don't escalate unless absolutely necessary. Their nods of understanding confirmed that her father's core principles still guided the club even decades later. With renewed determination, Sarah mounted her motorcycle and began the descent toward the coming confrontation. Oak Ridge Town Hall, a modest brick building dating from the 1930s, had rarely seen such activity. By 9:30, 30 minutes before the scheduled emergency meeting, the parking lot overflowed with vehicles. News of the confrontation between mysterious bikers and the Black Serpents had spread through town overnight, drawing citizens concerned about their community's future. Inside the council chambers, town officials prepared nervously as Richard Harlow conferred with his legal team. Impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that cost more than most Oak Ridge residents earned in months, he projected confidence and authority. Only those closest to him might notice the tension in his jaw or the way his fingers occasionally drummed against his thigh, signs of the rage simmering beneath his polished exterior. "The council votes are secure," he demanded of Jason Reed, who had spent the morning in last-minute meetings with officials. "3 of 5, guaranteed," Reed confirmed quietly. "Enough for the initial eminent domain process to begin. But, sir, there's significant public concern about last night's incident. The Black Serpents are not connected to VistaCorp in any official capacity." Harlow cut him off sharply. "Maintain that position regardless of questions. And the Iron Wolves? A vigilante organization with historical grievances against legitimate development. We've submitted documentation to state authorities detailing their past intimidation tactics." Harlow straightened his tie. "The narrative is clear: a developer bringing economic opportunity versus aging bikers resisting progress." Reed looked uncomfortable. "Many of them appear to be military veterans, sir. The optics of labeling them as criminals—" "Optics are your concern," Harlow snapped. "Results are mine. Is the presentation ready?" "Yes, sir." Reed gestured to the audiovisual equipment set up for VistaCorp's portion of the meeting. Architectural renderings, economic projections, job creation estimates, all prepared to demonstrate public benefit. And the Martinez property's strategic importance, highlighted as essential for traffic flow and infrastructure integration. Harlow nodded approval, then stiffened as the council chamber doors opened to admit Sarah Martinez. She entered alone, dressed not in her father's leather vest, but in a professional blazer over a simple blouse and slacks, the attire of a small business owner addressing her local government. Only Harlow seemed to notice the subtle military precision in her posture, or the alert assessment in her eyes as she scanned the room. Their gazes locked, briefly, mutual recognition of adversaries taking measure before battle. Sarah took a seat in the front row, acknowledging greetings from several townspeople who frequented her cafe. If she was intimidated by VistaCorp's imposing legal team or Harlow's cold stare, she showed no sign of it. At precisely 10 o'clock, Mayor Wilson gavelled the meeting to order. In his late 60s, the mayor had served Oak Ridge for 3 decades, witnessing its transition from prosperous timber town to struggling rural community. His weathered face reflected both authority and the strain of difficult decisions. This emergency session of the Oak Ridge Town Council will come to order, he announced. Our agenda today concerns a single-item consideration of economic necessity, designation for the proposed Vista Corp development, and potential eminent domain proceedings for properties essential to project completion. Murmurs rippled through the audience. While most residents knew development plans were underway, the phrase eminent domain confirmed rumors that had circulated for weeks. Before we begin formal deliberations, Mayor Wilson continued, we'll hear presentations from Vista Corp regarding the proposed development, followed by property owners potentially affected by these proceedings. Mr. Harlow, you may begin. Richard Harlow approached the podium with practiced confidence, his voice resonant as he addressed the council and assembled citizens. His presentation, slick with professional graphics and compelling statistics, painted a vision of Oak Ridge, transformed luxury accommodations, bringing wealthy tourists, hundreds of jobs, created property values, doubled tax revenues, quadrupled. The revitalization of Oak Ridge is within reach, he concluded smoothly, but requires cohesive development of the designated project area. While we've successfully negotiated purchases with most property owners, a few holdouts threaten the entire project's viability. He displayed a map highlighting several properties with the Iron Rose Cafe prominently marked in red. The cafe property in particular occupies a critical junction for traffic flow and utility infrastructure. Without it, the project cannot proceed, and the economic benefits we've outlined will be lost to Oak Ridge forever. Sarah watched the presentation with outward calm, though her military training allowed her to simultaneously monitor the room. She noted which council members nodded along with Harlow's points, which citizens appeared swayed by the economic promises, and most importantly, the positioning of Vista Corp's security personnel. 4 men in business casual attire, with the telltale bulges of concealed weapons and the alertness of professional guards. When Harlow finished to polite applause, Mayor Wilson turned to Sarah. Ms. Martinez, as the owner of the property primarily under consideration, you may address the council. Sarah rose and approached the podium with measured steps. The room quieted, citizens curious how the cafe owner would respond to Vista Corp's polished presentation. Thank you, Mayor Wilson, council members, and neighbors. She began, her voice clear and steady. I've lived in Oak Ridge most of my life. The Iron Rose Cafe has served this community since 1975 when my father opened it after returning from military service. She gestured to the assembled residents. Many of you remember him, James Martinez. He believed in Oak Ridge when the first timber crisis hit. He stayed when others left. He invested in this town because he saw value beyond profit margins and development potential. Nods from older residents acknowledged the truth of her words. The Iron Rose isn't just a business, it's part of Oak Ridge's heritage. It has weathered economic downturns, supported community events, provided a gathering place through good times and bad. Mr. Harlow sees it as an obstacle. I see it as the heart of Main Street. She turned to face Harlow directly. Vista Corp promises jobs and prosperity. But we should examine their track record in other communities before embracing those promises. In the past decade, 3 towns welcomed Vista Corp developments. In each case, initial economic boosts were followed by troubling patterns. Sarah activated a flash drive, bringing her own presentation to the screen. Unlike Vista Corp's glossy marketing materials, her slides showed newspaper articles, public records, and statistical analyses. Millerville, Idaho. Vista Corp Resort opened in 2015. By 2018, housing costs had risen 340%, forcing out original residents. Local businesses closed as commercial rents tripled. The promised permanent jobs materialized at less than 30% of projections. She advanced through slides methodically. Pine Ridge, Montana. Similar pattern with the addition of significant environmental violations that contaminated groundwater. VistaCorp settled lawsuits privately with non-disclosure agreements, but public health records show increased cancer rates in surrounding communities. Harlow rose halfway from his seat. Mayor Wilson, this presentation contains defamatory claims unsupported by evidence. All sourced from public records, Sarah countered calmly, indicating the citations on each slide. I'm simply providing context for the council's decision. To proceed, Ms. Martinez, Mayor Wilson instructed, though his expression had grown more concerned. Sarah's final slides shifted focus. Most troubling is VistaCorp's pattern of utilizing intimidation when legal methods fail. In each development, property owners who refused to sell reported vandalism threats and unexplained accidents, which ceased immediately after properties were transferred to VistaCorp. She displayed police reports and insurance claims supporting these assertions, then turned to face the council directly. 2 days ago, my 9-year-old daughter was injured at school after being bullied by children who told her we should sell our cafe to VistaCorp. Yesterday, our family heirloom was stolen by these same children. Last night, members of a motorcycle gang known as the Black Serpents attempted to damage the Iron Rose, an incident prevented only by community intervention. Sarah removed a folder from her briefcase. I've submitted evidence to federal authorities documenting connections between VistaCorp, the Black Serpents, and a pattern of money laundering through development projects. That evidence includes records from VistaCorp's own servers showing illegal financial transactions. A shocked murmur ran through the audience. Council members exchanged alarmed glances. Harlow's face darkened with barely controlled fury. "Mayor Wilson," he interrupted, "this is absurd slander. Ms. Martinez is attempting to distract from the legitimate economic discussion with outlandish conspiracy theories." "They aren't theories," a new voice called from the back of the room. All heads turned as Frank Matthews entered in his sheriff's uniform, accompanied by 2 men in suits who moved with the unmistakable bearing of federal agents. "Mayor Wilson, council members," Frank announced formally. "These gentlemen are Special Agents Kendrick and Torres from the FBI Financial Crimes Division. They've requested to address the council before any vote regarding eminent domain proceedings." The mood in the chamber shifted instantly. Mayor Wilson, looking simultaneously relieved and apprehensive, nodded to the agents. "The council will hear federal representatives." Special Agent Kendrick approached the podium as Sarah returned to her seat. In his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and the weathered face of a career investigator, he commanded attention without effort. "The FBI has been investigating VistaCorp for 18 months, he began without preamble. "Early this morning, we received substantial evidence corroborating our suspicions of money laundering, tax evasion, and criminal conspiracy." He glanced toward Sarah with a barely perceptible nod of acknowledgement. "Based on this evidence, a federal judge has issued search warrants for VistaCorp offices in 3 states, including the Oak Ridge headquarters. Additionally, we're seeking a temporary injunction against all property transactions involving VistaCorp pending full investigation." Harlow surged to his feet. "This is outrageous. My company has operated transparently for decades. These allegations are supported by your own financial records, Mr. Harlow," Agent Kendrick interrupted coldly. "Records documenting transfers from shell companies connected to arms dealers in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe. Records showing systematic bribery of officials in multiple jurisdictions." Harlow's eyes darted to the exits, calculating. Sarah tracked his gaze, noticing his security personnel subtly repositioning themselves. She touched her earpiece once, a silent alert to the iron wolves stationed outside. Agent Kendrick continued, turning to address the council. Mayor Wilson, we request that you postpone any vote on eminent domain proceedings until our investigation concludes. Given the evidence of attempted intimidation against local property owners, we're also requesting increased security measures for those individuals. The council chambers erupted in shocked conversations. Mayor Wilson banged his gavel repeatedly for order. This session will recess for 30 minutes while the council confers with legal counsel, he announced. No action will be taken until we resume. As the room began to clear, Harlow pushed past his stunned legal team and confronted Sarah directly. You think you've won, he hissed, voice low enough that only she could hear. Just like your father thought he'd won years ago. But this isn't over, Martinez. Not by a long shot. Sarah met his gaze steadily. My father wanted justice, not victory. He exposed weapons dealers who were profiting from American deaths. It wasn't about winning, it was about doing what was right. Your father destroyed everything my family built, Harlow snarled, decades of resentment bubbling to the surface. He betrayed his own team, his own country. No, Richard. He betrayed your father-in-law's greed and your ambition. Sarah's voice remained level. The Iron Wolves followed him because he lived by a code you could never understand: duty before self-honor, before profit. Harlow's hand moved unconsciously to his thigh, tracing the ancient scar. The Iron Wolves were mine before he stole them. I was the lieutenant. I should have led them. Leadership isn't granted by rank. It's earned through character. Sarah held his gaze without flinching. Which is why they follow me now. Before Harlow could respond, Agent Kendrick approached, flanked by his partner. Mr. Harlow, we need you to remain available for questioning. Please don't leave town. With a final venomous glance at Sarah, Harlow allowed himself to be led away by his attorneys, their urgent whispers suggesting frantic damage control efforts already underway. Frank Matthews appeared at Sarah's side. Impressive presentation. Where'd you get all that research on VistaCorp's other developments? Iron Wolves Network, Sarah explained. Turns out they've been tracking Harlow for years, building a case. All I did was connect the dots and package it properly. Frank nodded approval. Federal involvement changes everything. Town council won't touch eminent domain with FBI hovering around. Harlow's not finished, Sarah cautioned, watching the developer huddled with his team across the room. He's cornered now, which makes him more dangerous. That's why I've assigned deputies to key locations, Frank replied. And I suspect your Iron Wolves will maintain their positions regardless of what I say officially. Sarah didn't deny it. How's Lily doing? Doc Miller reports she's fine. Excited about the special delivery team Charlie arranged. A ghost of a smile touched Sarah's lips. She's earned it. This has been a lot for a 9-year-old to process. She's tougher than she looks, Frank observed. Must run in the family. Sarah's phone vibrated with an incoming message. Her expression tightened as she read it. Black serpents mobilizing. Snakes called in reinforcements from 3 states. How many? Scout's latest report confirms 98 riders now gathered at 5 different locations around Oak Ridge. That's more than double what we faced last night. Frank whistled softly. That's no longer harassment. That's an invasion force. And this message just came from our surveillance team at VistaCorp. Sarah showed him the phone. Harlow's security team is loading equipment into vehicles. They're preparing to move out. Frank frowned. The FBI agents are still here. He wouldn't run now. Not running, Sarah corrected grimly. Accelerating. If he can't win legally, he'll try to drive us out by force. She straightened her shoulders. Time for Phase 3. Richard Harlow stormed into VistaCorp's Oak Ridge headquarters, brushing past security and ignoring the concerned looks from employees. His legal team struggled to keep pace as he charged toward his private office. "Get Snake on the phone," he ordered Reed. "I want every available black serpent ready to prove at my signal." "Sir," Reed objected cautiously, "with federal agents now involved, escalating with the serpents could worsen our legal position significantly." "Our legal position?" Harlow's laugh held no humor. "We're facing RICO charges, asset freezes, and decades in federal prison. There is no legal position left to protect." He slammed his office door behind him, leaving his team exchanging worried glances in the hallway. Alone, Harlow accessed a hidden safe behind a landscape painting, removing cash passport and a loaded handgun. Emergency protocols established years ago activated in his mind. Bank accounts in the Caymans, the private airfield 30 miles north, the prepared identities waiting in Vancouver. He had planned for the possibility of exposure, had escape routes ready. But not like this. Not with James Martinez's daughter orchestrating his downfall. His secure phone rang Snake Williams calling back. "We have a situation," Harlow said without preamble. "Federal involvement, potential indictments. The Martinez woman somehow accessed our servers and handed everything to the FBI." "What do you need from us?" Snake's voice was coldly professional. "Total response. Every rider you can muster. I want that cafe and everything connected to the Iron Wolves erased from Oak Ridge." A pause. "That's beyond intimidation, Mr. Harlow. You're talking about open warfare against civilians." "I'm talking about eliminating the source of our problems," Harlow snapped. "The Martinez woman has federal protection now, but her property, her heritage, everything connected to the Iron Wolves, that's still vulnerable. My men reported well over 100 Iron Wolves in town yesterday," Snake reminded him. "Many with military backgrounds, all coordinated. This won't be easy. And it won't be clean." "I'm authorizing triple your usual rate," Harlow offered, "plus bonuses for completed objectives. By tomorrow morning, I want nothing left of the Iron Wolves' presence in Oak Ridge. Nothing." After ending the call, Harlow moved to his computer, accessing a hidden partition on the drive. There lay the real reason behind his obsession with the Martinez family and Oak Ridge files that went beyond money laundering and arms dealing. The truth was far more personal and damaging than anyone realized. Operation Granite Shadow hadn't been primarily about weapons smuggling. It had been about retrieving intelligence on American officials compromised by foreign interests. Intelligence that implicated Harlow's father-in-law and, by extension, several high-ranking Pentagon officials who'd survived the scandal and risen to even greater power. James Martinez had kept copies of everything as insurance. Insurance that Harlow had spent decades trying to locate and destroy. Insurance he believed must be hidden somewhere in Oak Ridge, possibly in the Iron Rose Cafe itself. If those files ever reached the FBI, not even Harlow's considerable resources could save him. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. He checked his watch. 6 hours until sunset. Time enough for one final operation to erase the Martinez legacy forever. Sarah Martinez stood in Doc Miller's living room holding her daughter in a tight embrace. Lily's small arms wrapped around her neck with surprising strength. "I missed you," the girl whispered. "Everyone's being weird and not telling me anything." "I know, sweetheart." Sarah smoothed Lily's hair. "I'm sorry about that. Sometimes adults think they're protecting kids by keeping secrets, but you deserve the truth." She led Lily to the couch sitting beside her. "The cafe might be in danger tonight. Some bad men want to hurt it because they're angry at me for standing up to them." Lily's eyes widened. "Because you wouldn't sell to Mr. Harlow." That's part of it. There's also history between Mr. Harlow and your grandfather, old arguments from before you were born. And the Iron Wolves are helping us, Lily asked. Doc Miller said they're everywhere in town now. Sarah nodded. They came when I called them, just like they used to come when Grandpa needed them. Lily considered this with the serious expression she reserved for important matters. Are we in danger too? Not just the cafe. Sarah hesitated, balancing honesty against causing fear. We have lots of people protecting us. Sheriff Frank has deputies watching us, and the Iron Wolves are keeping guard too. But you're worried, Lily observed perceptively. I can tell. Yes, Sarah admitted. I am, but being worried doesn't mean being helpless. We have a plan, and we have friends. She reached into her pocket and removed the red bandana, newly cleaned and mended. Speaking of which, someone got this back for you. Lily's face brightened as she accepted the bandana, running her fingers over the embroidered wolf's head in the corner. Scout found it at the Harlow house. He did? Sarah helped Lily tie it around her neck. And Team Charlie has something special for you too, a surprise that Grandpa would have wanted you to have. On cue, Eleanor Davidson entered the room carrying a small leather vest sized perfectly for a 9-year-old. The Iron Wolves insignia adorned the back with a special patch reading Wolf Cub beneath it. Lily's eyes widened in wonder. For me, for you, Eleanor confirmed, her weathered face softening. Your grandfather made it years ago, hoping someday he'd have grandchildren to pass the tradition to. We've kept it safe all this time. As Lily slipped on the vest with reverent care, Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. Part of her still wished she could have given her daughter a normal childhood free from legacy and conflict. Yet seeing Lily stand proudly in the colors that had meant so much to James Martinez stirred unexpected pride. I have something important to ask you, Sarah said, kneeling to Lily's level. Doc Miller has offered to take you to his brother's cabin by the lake tonight. It would be like a little adventure. You want me to hide? Lily interrupted her perceptiveness, surprising even Sarah. While you stay and fight. Sarah blinked, caught off guard by her daughter's directness. Yes, for tonight, until we're sure everything is safe. Will you come get me after? Anxiety crept into Lily's voice. Nothing could keep me away, Sarah assured, her throat tight with emotion. Mom! Lily hesitated, then straightened her shoulders beneath her new vest. I'll go with Doc Miller, but I want you to promise something. Anything, sweetheart. Don't let them burn our cafe. Grandpa built it and it's ours. Lily's expression showed a determination beyond her years. And come back safe. That's what a pack does, they always come home to each other. Sarah embraced her daughter fiercely, amazed at how much wisdom could come from a 9-year-old. When did you get so smart about wolf packs? I've been reading about them in science class, Lily said matter-of-factly. Wolves are strongest together, and they never abandon their family. After one final hug and reassurances to both Lily and Doc Miller, Sarah stepped onto the porch to find Big Mike waiting beside their motorcycles. Team leaders report black serpents gathering at 5 rally points, he informed her. Current count 98, with final stragglers still arriving. And our numbers. 137 Iron Wolves in position. 4 generations spanning in some families. Youngest is 19, oldest is 78. Pride evident in his voice, Big Mike added, even got 3 father-daughter pairs inspired by you and your dad. Sarah nodded, mentally reviewing contingencies. Frank says State Police ETA is 2 hours responding to reports of potential civil disturbance. FBI has requested additional agents, but they won't arrive until morning. We're on our own until then, Big Mike concluded. Not entirely. Sarah mounted her motorcycle. We have the town. Harlow never understood that part of my father's strategy. The Iron Wolves weren't just about fighting. They were about community. As they rode through Oak Ridge toward the designated command position, Sarah noted changes throughout town. Residents stood on porches, watching their passage, not with fear, but with recognition and support. Many waved or offered thumbs-up gestures. At key intersections, civilians had positioned themselves as lookouts, some wearing red bandanas in solidarity. Businesses that normally closed at 5 remained open, lights blazing, creating visibility throughout downtown. The community had chosen sides. The Iron Rose Cafe stood illuminated against the gathering dusk, its neon sign glowing defiantly. Sarah had reopened it that afternoon, serving free coffee to anyone wearing red. The message was clear: this was not just her fight. Iron Wolves had positioned themselves strategically throughout town, not just the club members who had answered her call, but local veterans, former law enforcement, and ordinary citizens who had trained with them throughout the day. Frank Matthews had organized civilian volunteers into communication teams, creating a network that covered every approach to Oak Ridge. Sarah parked behind the cafe and entered through the kitchen, finding the back room transformed into an operations center. Maps covered the walls, communications equipment filled tables, and Iron Wolves from 3 generations coordinated movements with practiced efficiency. "Sit, Rep," she requested, slipping easily into military terminology. Scout approached with a tablet displaying surveillance footage. Black serpents moving into staging positions on all approach roads. They've split into 4 groups to enter town from multiple directions. Estimated time to movement 45 minutes. Harlow. Still at VistaCorp headquarters with personal security. Vehicle running in the garage suggests potential rapid departure. A woman in her 30s, a second-gen wolf, who worked as a digital forensics expert, stepped forward with her laptop. "Sarah, we've decrypted part of the data package from Harlow's servers. There's something you need to see." Sarah leaned in, scanning the document on screen. Her eyes widened as she realized what she was reading. "This isn't just about money laundering or revenge," she said quietly. Operation Granite Shadow wasn't primarily about arms dealing. It was a counterintelligence operation. My father's team discovered American officials compromised by foreign interests. "That's why Harlow has been so obsessed with Oak Ridge," the analyst confirmed. "He believes your father hid copies of the evidence somewhere in town. Evidence that would implicate not just Harlow's father-in-law, but current high-ranking officials who've managed to escape scrutiny all these years." Sarah straightened the pieces, finally coming together. He doesn't just want the cafe for his resort or for revenge. He thinks the evidence is hidden there. "Is it?" Big Mike asked. Sarah looked around at the cafe her father had built, considering every renovation, every hidden corner she knew about. "I have no idea. But if my father did hide something here, we need to find it before Harlow does." She studied the tactical display, noting positions of Iron Wolves and civilian volunteers throughout Oak Ridge. The Black Serpents outnumbered law enforcement significantly, but with the combined forces she had assembled, the odds were nearly even. "Our objective remains defensive," she reminded the assembled leaders. "Protect the town document. Serpent activities for authorities avoid escalation. We hold until state police arrive." Eleanor raised a practical concern. "And if Harlow orders the Serpents to burn the town regardless of consequences?" "Then we adapt," Sarah answered grimly. "The code my father established wasn't just about protecting our own, it was about standing between innocents and those who would harm them. Tonight, that means all of Oak Ridge." She had just finished assigning final positions when Frank Matthews entered, still in uniform, but now wearing a red bandana around his wrist, subtle identification that aligned him with the Iron Wolves while maintaining his official status. "Just got word," he announced. "State Police ETA extended to 3 hours minimum. Multi-car pileup on the highway that looks suspiciously deliberate." "Harlow buying time," Sarah concluded. "He wants this finished before official intervention." "There's more," Frank continued. Snake Williams was just spotted entering VistaCorp headquarters. First direct contact between him and Harlow that we've documented. This news rippled through the command center. If Harlow was openly meeting with the Black Serpent's president, he had abandoned all pretense of legitimate business. "Perfect," Sarah decided. "Get surveillance teams in position. If we can document Harlow directly ordering criminal activities, the federal case strengthens considerably." As team leaders dispersed to final positions, Sarah took a moment alone in the cafe's front window, watching twilight settle over Oak Ridge. The town had changed in her lifetime, from prosperous timber community to struggling rural outpost weathering economic hardships and population decline. Yet something essential remained, a resilience she had rediscovered in recent days. Her father had understood that protecting a community meant more than confronting its enemies. It meant building connections, fostering loyalty, creating systems that survived individual threats. The Iron Wolves had never been just a motorcycle club. They were a network of mutual support disguised as one. Sarah touched the president's patch on her vest, thinking of the promise she'd made to Lily. This wasn't just about stopping Harlow anymore. It was about preserving something worth protecting, something she had almost walked away from years ago. Her radio crackled. Movement on East Approach reported a surveillance team. Serpents advancing in formation. Similar reports followed quickly from other sectors. The Black Serpents had launched their coordinated approach to Oak Ridge from all directions, exactly as predicted. "All teams execute Phase 3, Sarah ordered. "Defensive positions only. Document everything." As darkness fell completely, the distant rumble of motorcycle engines grew steadily louder, the sound of nearly 100 Black Serpents converging on the small town. Sarah stepped onto the cafe's porch, joined by Big Mike Eleanor and core team leaders. "Here they come," Big Mike observed unnecessarily as headlights appeared at the end of Main Street. "Right on schedule," Sarah replied calmly, "almost like they're following our script." The first Black Serpents reached Main Street at precisely 9:15, their motorcycles advancing in tight formation behind Snake Williams and his lieutenants. They slowed upon discovering the street unusually illuminated and populated despite the hour. Residents stood in doorways and on sidewalks, many wearing red bandanas, silently watching their approach. More disconcerting were the Iron Wolves positioned at strategic points, not confrontational, but visibly present and alert. Their numbers seemed to have multiplied since the previous night's encounter. Snake raised his hand, halting the Serpent's advance midway down Main Street. Something felt wrong. The town should have been quiet, minimally defended, vulnerable to swift attack. Instead, it appeared prepared and organized. His radio crackled with reports from other Serpent groups approaching from different directions. Each encountered similar conditions: illuminated streets, civilian presence, and Iron Wolves in defensive positions. Sarah Martinez stepped forward from the group standing before the Iron Rose Cafe. She had changed from her business attire back into riding gear, her father's vest prominent over a tactical shirt. "Vincent Williams," she called, using Snake's legal name. "You and your men are trespassing on private property with evident criminal intent. Turn around now." Snake revved his engine, addressing his followers rather than Sarah. "Spread out, secure the street. Primary target is the cafe. Secondary targets, as briefed." The serpents began to move as instructed braking formation to establish control of Main Street. But as they advanced, they discovered obstacles they hadn't anticipated. Civilian vehicles had been strategically positioned to channel movement, leaving the serpents exposed. From rooftops and second-story windows, cameras recorded their every move. Most concerning iron wolves appeared in increasing numbers, emerging from side streets and alleys with disciplined coordination. They made no aggressive moves, simply establishing presence and observation. Snake realized with growing unease that they had ridden into a carefully prepared defensive posture, one designed not to fight them, but to contain and document their activities. "Williams," Sarah called again. "State police are en route. Federal agents have been notified of your presence. Whatever Harlow is paying you, consider whether it's worth federal prosecution." Snake calculated rapidly. His forces still outnumbered visible opposition, but the terrain had been prepared against them, and the legal consequences suddenly seemed more concrete with cameras everywhere. "We have business with the cafe," he declared, maintaining his commitment to Harlow. "Stand aside." "The cafe is protected," Sarah replied simply. "So is Oak Ridge." As if on cue, engines roared to life throughout town. On every street, alley, and approach, motorcycles appeared, not just the 50-odd iron wolves Snake had counted previously, but well over 100 riders of all ages. They formed a perimeter around the black serpents, creating not a threatening circle, but a containing one. Among them, Snake recognized patches from legitimate motorcycle clubs from across the Northwest groups that normally avoided involvement in conflicts like this. They displayed red bandanas or small wolf insignias, identifying themselves as allies of the Iron Wolves without directly wearing their colors. Snake's radio erupted with urgent messages. His lieutenants reported state police vehicles approaching from the south. Civilian roadblocks had appeared on exit routes. Most alarmingly, several reported unmarked vehicles with federal government plates establishing positions on the town's perimeter. His phone rang Harlow, calling for a status update. This time, Snake answered. "The situation is compromised," he said without preamble. "They were waiting for us. The entire town is mobilized and organized." "I don't care." Harlow's voice was tight with desperation. "Burn the cafe, now, before they can stop you." "Sir, my men are exposed and surrounded. This operation is—" "Triple the agreed payment if you complete this tonight," Harlow interrupted. $5 million total. Just get it done." Snake hesitated. The money was substantial, but the risk had increased exponentially. He studied Sarah Martinez standing before the Iron Rose Cafe, backed by a growing force of iron wolves and townspeople. "Last chance, Williams," Sarah offered, seemingly able to read his thoughts. "Leave peacefully. Take your grievance with Harlow elsewhere. This town is not your battlefield." Snake made his decision. "Pull back," he ordered his lieutenants. "Regroup at Rally Point Delta." The Black Serpents began a disciplined withdrawal, maintaining formation but clearly abandoning their planned attack. Sarah had calculated correctly. Snake Williams was a criminal, but not a fool. When presented with overwhelming opposition and certain legal consequences, he would choose self-preservation. What Sarah hadn't anticipated was Harlow's desperation. As the last serpents disappeared down side streets, a black Escalade screeched onto Main Street, stopping in front of the cafe. Richard Harlow himself emerged from the passenger seat, a pistol in his hand. "Martinez!" he shouted, his composed businessman persona completely gone. "Where is it? Where did your father hide the files?" Sarah motioned for the Iron Wolves to hold position as she stepped forward, keeping her hands visible. "It's over, Harlow. The FBI has everything they need from your servers." "Not everything," Harlow snarled, advancing toward her. "Your father kept physical copies. Insurance, he called it. Where are they?" Understanding dawned on Sarah. You think he hid them in the cafe? I know he did. 30 years I've been searching, building my company, waiting for the chance to find those files and erase the last evidence. Harlow's eyes were wild, his gun hand trembling slightly. Tell me where they are, or I'll burn this place to the ground with you in it. You won't find anything here, Sarah said calmly, though she had no idea if her father had hidden anything in the cafe. The evidence is already with federal authorities. Harlow's security team had exited the Escalade, weapons drawn, but hesitant as they registered the overwhelming numbers surrounding them. The Iron Wolves had closed ranks, creating a protective semicircle around Sarah and the cafe. You're lying, Harlow insisted. Your father was too careful. He always kept backups. He raised his pistol, aiming directly at Sarah. Last chance, Martinez. Before anyone could react, a single rifle shot cracked through the night. Harlow screamed, his pistol flying from his hand as the bullet struck it precisely. From the roof of the building across the street, a figure in black tactical gear lowered a precision rifle. Frank Matthews, the sheriff, who had once trained as a sniper alongside Sarah's father. Harlow clutched his injured hand, rage and fear warring on his face as Iron Wolves closed in. His security team, recognizing the hopelessness of their position, lowered their weapons. Richard Harlow, Frank announced, descending to street level with his rifle secured. You're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted assault with a deadly weapon, and about 20 other charges the feds are drawing up as we speak. As Frank led Harlow away in handcuffs, the developer turned to Sarah one last time. This isn't justice, he spat. Your father betrayed his country, his team. My father protected his country from men like you who put profit above everything else, Sarah corrected quietly. The Iron Wolves stood for something you never understood. Honor, loyalty, community. That's why they followed him then, and that's why they answer when his daughter calls now. Big Mike approached as Harlow was placed in a police cruiser. Your father would be proud of how you handled this. Not a shot fired except Frank's, and that was a precision disarm, not an escalation. Sarah nodded, surveying the Iron Wolves and townspeople who had come together to protect Oak Ridge. This town isn't just buildings and businesses. It's people looking out for each other. That's what the Iron Wolves were always meant to protect. So what happens now? Eleanor asked, joining them. With the club, I mean. Sarah looked around at the assembled wolves, from first-generation veterans to young second- and third-gen members who had answered her call. They waited expectantly, sensing a decision being made. The Iron Wolves continue, she said with newfound certainty. Not as they were, perhaps, but with the same purpose my father established, standing between the innocent and those who would harm them. But we do it smarter, more organized, and always within the law. Approval rippled through the gathered members. Big Mike nodded satisfaction. And you, he asked, ready to wear that president's patch permanently? Sarah touched the worn leather of her father's vest. 24 hours ago, she would have refused, still believing she could separate her quiet cafe owner life from her father's legacy. Yes, she decided. The Iron Wolves need leadership that understands both the old ways and the new world. I can provide that bridge between generations. The next hours passed in organized chaos. As state police finally arrived, FBI agents secured VistaCorp headquarters, and the remaining Black Serpents departed town under law enforcement escort. Sarah coordinated with authorities, providing evidence and witness statements, while ensuring Iron Wolves maintained their supportive but lawful presence. By dawn, Oak Ridge had settled into an exhausted calm. Sarah, having finished debriefing federal agents, mounted her motorcycle for the ride to Doc Miller's brother's cabin to retrieve Lily. The sun was rising over the lake as she pulled up to the rustic structure. Before she could even cut the engine, the cabin door burst open and Lily ran out, still wearing her wolf cub vest over pajamas. "Mom!" she cried, launching herself into Sarah's arms as she dismounted. Sarah held her daughter tightly, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the small arms wrapped around her neck. "I promised I'd come back, didn't I? Is the cafe okay?" Lily asked immediately. "The cafe is fine. Everything's fine." Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair. "Mr. Harlow and the bad men are gone. For good. For good." Doc Miller appeared in the doorway, smiling at their reunion. "She refused to sleep until she heard from you. Stayed up all night by the window watching for headlights. Just like her grandfather," Sarah said. "Stubborn when it comes to protecting what matters." After thanking Doc Miller, Sarah settled Lily in front of her on the motorcycle for the ride home. As they cruised along the lake shore, Lily leaned back against her mother. "Are the Iron Wolves going to stay in town now?" she asked. "Some will. Others will go back to their homes. But they'll always come when called," Sarah explained. "That's what a pack does. And you're their leader now, like Grandpa was." Sarah considered the question carefully. "I am. But I'm still your mom first, and the Iron Rose is still our home and business. The Iron Wolves are just extended family." "I like that," Lily decided. "A really big family." When they arrived back in Oak Ridge, they found the town already stirring despite the early hour. The Iron Rose Cafe stood untouched, its neon sign still glowing in the morning light. Parked motorcycles lined Main Street Iron Wolves, who had remained to ensure peace through the night. Inside, Eleanor had opened early, serving coffee to exhausted wolves and townspeople alike. She handed Sarah a steaming mug as they entered. "Harlow's been transferred to federal custody," Frank reported, joining them at the counter. "Agent Kendrick sends his thanks for your assistance." "And the Black Serpents?" Sarah asked. "Scattered. State police intercepted some crossing the county line, but most simply disappeared. Snake Williams is cooperating with authorities in exchange for reduced charges." A big Mike claimed his usual corner table joints creaking as he settled into the chair. "Town council's called an emergency session for noon. Word is, they're voting to formally reject Vista Corp's development proposal and establish a community trust for local businesses." Sarah nodded approval, then noticed Lily watching their interactions with keen interest. "Sweetheart, would you take these muffins to the regulars' table? I think they've earned breakfast after last night." As Lily proudly carried the plate to the Iron Wolves, Eleanor leaned across the counter. "You did well, Sarah. James would be proud of how you handled everything." "I'm still processing it all," Sarah admitted. "Finding out who Dad really was, what the Iron Wolves actually stood for all these years, and now deciding what they'll become under my leadership." "And?" Eleanor prompted. Sarah watched her daughter chatting animatedly with the aging bikers, who listened with the indulgent attention of honorary grandfathers. Despite the conflict and revelations of recent days, Lily seemed more confident and secure than before, connected to a heritage and community that extended beyond their small family unit. "I think it's time for the Iron Wolves to evolve," Sarah said thoughtfully. "My father built them to fight battles that the system couldn't or wouldn't address. We'll continue that mission, but with new methods for a new era. Less vigilante justice, more community organizing and legal advocacy." "The code remains the same," Big Mike observed. "Stand for those who can't stand for themselves." "Exactly." Sarah's gaze swept over the gathered Iron Wolves of all generations. "The world has changed since my father's day. The threats are different, more complex. But the need for people willing to take a stand hasn't changed at all." Eleanor's weathered face broke into a rare smile. "That sounds exactly like what James would say if he were here." Outside, morning sunlight gleamed on motorcycles parked along Main Street, evidence of the iron wolves who had answered Sarah's call, who had stood beside her to protect not just a cafe, but a community. They represented a legacy more complex and meaningful than she had ever realized growing up. Sarah poured coffee for Eleanor and herself, then raised her mug slightly. To the next chapter of the Iron Wolves, and to my father, who built something that outlasted him. As regular customers began arriving, Sarah returned to her role as cafe owner, serving coffee and greeting townspeople by name. But the president's patch remained on her vest, and the red bandana Lily wore proudly told everyone who entered exactly where the Iron Rose Cafe stood in Oak Ridge. Some legacies, Sarah had learned, weren't burdens to escape, but foundations to build upon. The Iron Wolves would ride again under her leadership, not just to confront threats, but to strengthen the communities they called home. And whenever a child anywhere faced bullies or intimidation, they might just find that a pack of wolves, old and young, wearing leather vests and red bandanas, would appear to ensure justice prevailed. Led by a cafe owner who had embraced her father's most powerful lesson. True strength comes not from standing alone, but from bringing people together for something larger than themselves.